The Still Loading podcast is brought to you by the wonderful people on Patreon. Amazing people like Stephen P., Eric H., Matt aka Stormageddon, Ryan K., Kevin from the Bit by Bit Foundation, Gilmer, and Mr. Biscuits have all been wonderful enough to support the show over there. So if you would also like to get your name read at the beginning of an episode, along with a bunch of other goodies, go over to patreon.com/stillloadingpod and check out everything it has to offer. Hey everyone, before this episode begins, I wanted to give you a quick heads up that this is the finale of my Patreon series, Still Bonding, which, as I have shouted out numerous times at the end of every episode, my monthly James Bond podcast, where me and a bunch of friends bonded over 007. I figured the finale is actually out today, the same day this is getting released on the free feed. I figured as a thank you to my guests who lent me their time, only to have a lot of it behind a paywall, I'd make this finale free for everyone. It is a James Bond movie ranking, and I wanted to put this at the top to let you all know there will be spoilers. I feel like that should be apparent, but just in case, I want to make you all aware there will be spoilers for the James Bond movies, but that's it, y'all. That is all the preamble I am going to give. Without further ado, here is the finale of Still Bonding and the Still Bonding official James Bond movie ranking. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this new episode of Still Bonding, the only James Bond podcast where me and a bunch of friends bond over 007, and it is the final episode of Still Bonding. It's actually a month late, and it is a month late because everybody, I moved. I bought a house. My wife and I bought a house, and we had 3 or 4 weeks of hell trying to organize everything. But we are moved, and now we are recording in earnest. We are in a new location, and this episode is going to be the first Still Bonding that's fully not going to be on Patreon. It's going to be released for everyone on the free feed. So hello, all you listeners on the regular Still Loading podcast feed. If you like what you hear, there are 25 other episodes diving deep into the Bond movies, with a cavalcade of various guests. And 2 of the guests who have been with me for a lot of them are joining me today to rank our favorite Bond movies. I'm going to first throw it over to Mel Burb, James Burb. Mel, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, and congratulations on the house. That's so exciting.
Thank you. I'm happy it's finally here. I'm actually a little nervous with recording, not because of the new space. Well, it's because of the new space, but because it's very hollow in here. So I hear a lot of room tone, but I'm hoping that my recording software doesn't have a lot of it. I've done some remote recordings and it's been fine so far. So we'll see how this goes. But yeah, Mel, thank you for joining me. You were on Live and Let Die, and then I want to say you were on one other. Why am I blanking on the other one you were on?
I was on Goldfinger.
That's what it was.
I think those were the 2 I did. I can't think of another.
You were on Live and Let Die and Goldfinger, I believe. And then I was going to have you back on, like, we went through a bunch of movies, and then we got to the Daniel Craig era, and you're like, oh, I'll pass. Is that a hint as what's to come? You'll have to find out, listeners.
Yeah. And you also had us on, this is going to the game. I know I was also with Chris when we did Goldfinger, not only the movie, but the walk through old school PC
the
game.
Text adventure, yeah.
Yes, that was such a kick.
That was so fun, man. Those episodes, I love those. Yeah. And actually, since you mentioned him, the other guest, as I call him, the hero of Still Bonding, who was my knight in shining armor, who saved me when chaos ensued. Meaning there was a lot of scheduling chaos, and this man was willing to jump in at a moment's notice. Chris, aka the British Bond Addict. Chris, how are you doing today?
Hey, Josh, not doing too bad. And sorry, try that again. Hey, Josh, not doing too bad. Also, congratulations as well. I know this has been a long time in the running, so glad to be here to commemorate your first full podcast in the new house.
Yeah, first full recording. I'm excited. And I'm excited for this, y'all. I've been looking forward to this all day, ranking the James Bond movies. Now, listeners, the way we are going to do this, it's similar to how a couple years ago I did an episode where me and a bunch of friends ranked the Final Fantasy VII characters. And the format that we used for that is the same format we are going to be using for this, where we are going to start with our least favorite Bond movies and work up to our most favorite. We are each going to say our least favorite Bond movie, 20, 25 out of 25. And however, we cannot discuss the movies until all three of us have mentioned it. So let's say two of us mention the same movie at round 25, and the last one, it's their favorite Bond movie, and they rank it at number one. Looks like we're going to have to wait all the way to round 21, round one, or round 25, I guess, the final round to discuss that movie, because all three of us, have to rank that movie before we can discuss it in earnest. And I have a whole point tallying system that that we can go into, that I can go into later, about what the overall ranking, kind of finding like a mean or an average between all of these to see what is the aggregate ranking of this between the three of us, but we'll get into all that later on. So I guess we should kick this off.
Before we do go into this, I just
Mm,
want to say how excruciatingly hard this was for
yes.
me to rank all of these. I know I've seen this done in different like YouTube videos and podcasts and on Instagram and the socials and such. And I struggle with this so much. Even picking like my top 5 favorite Bond films was
It's hard,
difficult.
man.
So
Yeah.
I thought so hard about this. And you know what? It might change tomorrow. We will see.
Yes, I think that's a good thing to preface this, where Bond, I feel like this is the same for all of us. Our favorite Bond movies, our ranking of Bond movies changes all the time, month to month, day to day. Like it really is just like, this is very much on at this time, at this place, on the day we are recording this is how we feel. Because Bond, as we've discussed in some of the Still Bonding episodes, like, we'll talk about a movie like, I didn't like this one at first, but as I came back to it a couple years later, it grew into one of my favorite ones. And likewise, I'm sure some of these movies may start out low and maybe move high for us later on, or and vice versa. So this is not gospel, is what we're saying, but we are Bond aficionados, so this is as close to an official ranking as you're going to get on Still Loading. So yeah, are you both ready to dive into this?
Ready to go.
Aye, aye.
All right, we are going. So I don't know what order to do this in. I think, just because I feel bad going first, we're going to start actually with you, Mel. We're going to do Mel, Chris, and then myself. So, Mel, what is your least favorite Bond 25? What is your least favorite
Oh,
Bond film?
such a gentleman. Thank you. I'm going to kick things off. Number 25 for me is Quantum of Solace.
Okay, you might have to wait a little bit of time for that one to discuss that one, but we'll see where it goes. We'll see where it goes. Chris, over to you. What is your 25th? What are your least favorite Bond movie?
I'm with Mel. It's also Quantum of Solace, although it was close between 24 and 25. Those two are pretty low for me, but I think of just unenjoyableness, Quantum is bottom for me.
Oh my gosh, I'm color me surprised, actually, and we're gonna have to wait a little, not a lot of time, but we're gonna have to wait a little bit of time to discuss that one. My least favorite, my 25th ranked Bond movie is Spectre. So this is a non-discussion round. No movie has been mentioned. No movie has been mentioned 3 times yet. So we are going to move on to our 24th ranking. So Mel, what is your 24th Bond movie?
No Time to Die.
No, first count for No Time to Die. Okay, so we have 1 for No Time to Die, 1 for Spectre, and 2 for Quantum of Solace. Chris, what is your 24th movie?
This was the lowest for the longest time. It's raised 1 position. It's Moonraker.
Moonraker. Oh, and that's the one that I forced you to watch with me.
I think on that podcast I said it was like unequivocally my least favorite Bond film, but now the times have changed. It's now soared up to 24.
I'm excited to find out how Quantum of Solace upstaged it to lower itself down to 25. But for my 24, it is Die Another Day. So still another no discussion round. That is interesting. Okay, so Mel, up to you for 23rd.
23. This position is Spectre for me.
Okay, there we go.
Daniel
2
Craig
for
so
Spectre. Oh God, you're right. It is all Daniel Craig. This is going to be interesting. Okay, Chris, over to you. What's your 23?
23 is No Time to Die.
No Time to
Okay,
Die.
so now we can talk about how badly it sucked. Right?
No, I think
Yes, because you and I, Josh, ranked it 24th, didn't we?
No, I did Die Another Day. However,
Another Day.
However, though, Mel, know what my 23 is?
Oh.
No Time to Die. We can discuss No Time to Die. So No Time to Die is the first one discussed. It is, I mean, I'm assuming it's going to pan out this way, but as of this recording, No Time to Die, or as of this moment, No Time to Die is collectively our least favorite Bond film. So I'm going to kick it off
I heard Die, and there's so many dies in here. And I was like, oh, another No Time to Die. Die Another Day. I told you I would get confused by this. We're only 3 movies in.
No, it's okay. That's why we got this covered. So let's discuss, y'all. So I guess to start off, though, the lowest ranking out of this was yours, Mel, only by 1. You put it at 24. So what? I guess we'll start off with you. What makes this so low for you?
Oh God, where do I start? Okay, it's really interesting because after this movie came out, like the night that I went to go see it, I hopped on a Zoom call with a bunch of other Bond fans, and some of the fellas just adored it. Oh, all of the nods to majesties. Now, here's the thing. I am a huge Roger Moore fan, and I had this discussion, and I found it really interesting with another fella, because one of the things that he's always telling me is, Roger Moore is so cheesy, it's so corny. But what's funny to me is all of the jokes and the fun lightheartedness that we get in the Moore movies are clearly very intentional. What I find cheesy and corny is when they're forcing this intentional sap into these Bond movies, and it just lands flat for me. The whole, she does have your eyes, and, let me tell you a story about a man named Bond, James Bond. It just came across as so saccharine, like sickly saccharine, and that's cheesy and corny to me. And it gets a big, I don't find it romantic or touching or moving. It gets a big eye roll for me. And again, I think it's because they're trying to play it off as serious drama, and it just doesn't hit me that way. And so, I mean, that's just a personal thing. Like I said, I spoke with fellows who were just like, this was the most incredible movie. It hit me hard. Folks who had daughters and things that.
I cried rewatching it for the podcast, because when the movie came out, my daughter was only like, came out in 2021. She was less than a year old. And now that she's 3, like I see a lot more of some, Matilda is she's like 6 or 7 in the movie, maybe 8, I don't know. So she's closer to that age now. So seeing it closer to that age, and she has more personality now than when she was basically just a potato that pooped everywhere. It hit me a lot harder. So I can understand why that hit other people harder, for sure.
Now, let me ask you this, though, because we got into a really interesting discussion. Obviously, with your daughter, when when Bond is told she's not yours, how did you interpret that line? Did you interpret that she was lying to him to protect her daughter, to protect Matilda? Because as a woman, I interpreted that as clearly that was his daughter, but she's not yours, meaning back off. You haven't been a part of our lives. You told me at the train station to get lost. Like,
See,
meaning
I took it as a combo of the two, where I thought she was trying to lie to him to get him to believe that Mathilde was not his daughter. And I guess I should have I'm going to put a spoiler warning that's like recorded after at the beginning of this episode. So by the way, don't worry about spoilers. I just realized I probably should have said that at the top. I'll put it in post. Anyway, with this though, I felt like she was straight up lying to him, trying to trick him, but because of the shit he did. It was because she was still mad at him, and justifiably so. She's like, I don't like, you don't deserve, like, I don't want you anymore in my life to like screw Mathilde up either. Like it was kind of a combo, not as like a way to make, not in a way that like she's not yours, even though like biologically she is. I think she just didn't want him in the picture at all in that moment.
that's how I took it. It was definitely not you're not the biological father. It was back the hell off. She doesn't belong to you. This is not your place. That's how I took it. But yeah, I just, this is one that I have not rewatched. Since I saw it in the theater. I have no desire to rewatch it. I feel like Craig's entire tenure was such a wah wah that, the way that it ended, I've got no desire to see Bond die again. I knew, I had a feeling going into that was how they were going to end it, because they had worked this character arch into, his films. There was nowhere else they could go. They wrote themselves into a corner. But I just found Safin as the main villain to be very lackluster. It was way too long. There were parts that dragged. So many things wrong with this movie.
Chris, what about you? What are your thoughts?
I was going to say, just talking about the Mathilde thing quickly, I took it as lazy story writing so they could shoehorn in an emotional ending. Which is just lots of the film to me. Lots of it seems so lazy and so unnecessary and so just almost pandering in a way. Safin as the boss is just, like the bad guy, is just a complete dull note. Like Christopher Waltz, who was terrible in Spectre, at least does something for the 2 minutes he's on screen here.
But it was just so much better in this than he is in Spectre.
Yeah, like there's only one scene I actively enjoy, and that's the whole part where they're in Cuba. Love that part. But then also the runtime, it's nearly 3 hours. I mean, I often go back and will just throw on a Bond film because I feel like it. I've never felt the inclination, and this is after, 2 years at this point, I've never felt the inclination to just throw on No Time to Die.
Well, it's not a movie that you can throw on. Let's say it was even shorter. It's so emotionally heavy. It's like, it just, if you throw a Bond movie on in the background, you want it to be something that's comforting. This movie's not comforting. It makes you sad. No, I'm kind of with you. Like, I like this movie, I think, more than both of you. I do think I'm with you on Safin or however you pronounce it. The thing that they did, and when we get to Spectre, I'll rant on it too, but it's a similar point where they cast these phenomenal actors to play the main villain and do nothing with them. They completely do a disservice to the actor by casting them as a Bond villain, and you're expecting like Javier Bardem to come back and do, or like whatever your favorite Bond villain is. Like Rami Malek and Christoph Waltz are fantastic actors, and it just feels like, especially in this one, like Rami Malek gets nothing to do, and the villain's motivation makes no fucking sense. It makes absolutely no sense. Like there's no rhyme or reason as to why he wants to just eradicate half the world with this sci-fi thing. But we do have to move on. Otherwise we could continue this discussion and we still have 24 others to get through. So Mel, throwing it over to you for your 22nd ranked movie.
Casino Royale.
Oof. That one hurts. That's the first one that hurt me.
Oh, I'll go into it later.
Oh, we will. Chris, you're up next.
Thunderball.
Okay, so that's the first mentions of Thunderball and Casino Royale. For me, my ranking of that one is, let me go up to On Her Majesty's Secret Service. We're going to have to wait to find out why that is a little bit later on. Moving up to 21 for you, Mel.
To round off my Craig in the bottom 5, Skyfall.
It's all Craig, all
Yep.
Daniel Craig at the bottom. There's
Like I
no love
said,
for the
they're
man.
so depressing. They're so depressing.
Oh my God. Chris, you're 21.
21 for me is Spectre.
Spectre. I believe we are at a discussion round then for Spectre. If you don't mind, because this was my least favorite, I want to kick this one off. In short, fuck this movie. Um, what bothers me so much about this film is that it is the worst tendencies of Hollywood all put into one. You bring back a brand that you know from a famous, they bring back Spectre, the iconic villains of the Bond movies from the Connery era, excuse me, and those little tiny nods in the more era. You bring him back, you're like, okay, this is awesome, let's bring him back, and then they just proceed to retcon everything they built in Casino, Quantum, and Skyfall into this fucking bullshit plot twist, and also make Blofeld Bond's brother for no fucking reason. And the reveal of, because they give Blofeld a different name, it's Franz Oberhauser. And when they reveal that, when Oberhauser goes like, Franz Oberhauser is dead, my name is now Ernst Stavro Blofeld, that means nothing to the audience if they don't know the history of Bond. It is like fan service done in the worst way, and it's not good fan service on top of that. It just they clearly had no intention of connecting the previous 3 Bond movies together. And then all of a sudden they're like, yeah, let's do it. They're just all, Lashif, he was part of Spectre the whole time. Quantum, the entire organization of Quantum from that second one, yeah, that's actually all Spectre too. Silva, who had no ties with anyone, yeah, he's all part of Spectre too. I'm the author of your pain, or whatever the hell that line is. I cannot stand this movie. While I like certain elements, some of the cinematography and some of like the set pieces, and I like Léa Seydoux well enough, I cannot stand this film, and I need to stop, otherwise I will continue to rant. Who wants to jump in next?
I'll jump in next. I'll jump in next because Quantum of Solace, No Time to Die, and Spectre, which were my bottom 3, I had only seen once in the theater. Spectre, I fell asleep during.
I don't blame you.
I fell asleep, woke up when they were explaining the whole Brofeld thing, and was just like, I'm not fighting it, and just went back to sleep. And then the next thing I know, I wake up with the gigantic, like with the big explosive scene where the entire theater was shaking. But because the parts I watched were somewhat better, that's why Spectre ranked higher than No Time to Die or Quantum for me. I think it actually got a more favorable ranking because I did only see part of it.
I just love the quote of waking up and seeing the movie again, be like, I'm not going to fight it, and just going back to sleep. That's like the epitome of the description for this movie. Chris, your thoughts though?
I mean, Brofeld was a terrible plot twist that we all saw coming anyway. I don't know why they just didn't hype it up from the beginning, saying like, this is the return of Blofeld, instead of like, tee-hee, no, it's not. And it's such a shame because the film started so well. I love the scene in Mexico, and you think, oh, we're going to go back to like a proper style Bond adventure. And then no. And then also, I really don't like Madeleine Swann as the Bond girl that Bond finally falls for and rides off into the sunset with and into the next film. They don't have any chemistry whatsoever. So it's just not believable. I mean, Craig's not at his best in this one either. I guess the supporting cast are good in moments, but overall it's just another kind of slog to get through.
Yeah. Yeah, it really is a damn shame too, because like you had so many things going for it. You have Christoph Waltz, like I mentioned when we were discussing No Time to Die. Like you hire these amazing actors and you do nothing with them. Like Christoph Waltz as Blofeld should have been a slam dunk. It should have worked. And I don't know if it's the writing. I don't know if it was the direction, but there was just he's not menacing in the slightest. Like at all. Like I feel no tension with him. I like every scene with him and Bond. Like I like when you like, even in the old Bond movies, when you see like blonde, excuse me, Bond in Blofeld's lair in like You Only Live Twice or something like that. Like Donald Pleasance, as much as I don't necessarily find him all that like menacing, he still has like this air of like he's in charge about like he has more gravitas than Christoph Waltz does in this movie.
You,
I just
you can say something
cannot stand it.
positively. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was saying you can say something positively distinctive about every Blofeld, but the only distinct things about Christoph Waltz are negative things.
And he does a lot better in No Time to Die, but then I'm just kind of like, well, why couldn't you be that scary in the first movie? Like he legitimately like unsettled me in No Time to Die during his scene. Like him and Craig back and forth was fantastic. At least I thought. I really enjoyed their scene. But the rest of it just but he's not the main villain in that movie. Rami Malek is, and as we discussed, it's kind of just falls flat. And also like once again, the villain's motivations don't make sense in this movie. Like he your villain has to want something that at least makes sense. Like in almost every other Bond movie, it's like power or what they want to reshape the world. Blofeld in this movie just sounds like a kid who's like, I didn't get to play with my dad as much as my adopted brother. It just, so I killed him. Like there's no, it's stupid. I cannot stand this movie. I like parts of it. I like some of the locations, the locales specifically are the parts I like the most. Like you mentioned, Chris, Mexico is awesome. I also really like where you see Mr. White in that cabin in like Norway or whatever the hell, or Sweden or somewhere up in Europe. I like that area, but I like the locations. That's what I like most about this movie, and everything else is okay.
Yeah, no, I agree. Just a kind of a stinker.
For my 21, it is License to Kill.
Oof.
Yeah, we're getting into. I will say for me now, I would say after No Time to Die, like my bottom three, those are movies, and Die Another Day I can put on a little bit more, but like those bottom three are ones that are very hard for me just to decide to put on. But like On Her Majesty's Secret Service, License to Kill, and what the next couple rankings are going to be, they're ones I actually kind of enjoy a little bit more. Like I enjoy putting these on in the background. So we're into the range where it's like the bottom three for me are ones that I really don't enjoy all that much. But now we're into a range where I'm like, I like these well enough. Like I'd watch these if I was in the mood. Like I would find myself in the mood to watch these at least like once a year type of thing.
Yeah, pretty much 20 and up for me are films I thoroughly enjoy.
And as you said, we are at 20, Chris. So Mel, throwing it over to you for your 20th Bond movie.
Yeah, Majesties.
On Her Majesty, that is 2 for On Her Majesty's Secret Service. Okay. Chris, for your 20th Bond movie.
Mel, forgive me, it's Man with the Golden Gun.
Man with the golden gun. So I'm just going to abbreviate that so I don't go crazy trying to type out Man with the Golden Gun in my Excel spreadsheet here. My 20th is For Your Eyes Only. Okay, a non-discussion round. So far, we've only had single movie discussion rounds. That's okay. Moving on to movie number 19. Mel, what is your 19?
The Living Daylights.
Whoa, the Living Daylights.
Great song.
I like Aha, man. It's a fun it's a fun one. All right, Chris, you're 19.
You Only Live Twice.
Ooh, poor Nancy Sinatra.
The song is far better in Living Daylights.
Yes, I agree. You Only Live Twice. Okay. Then for my 19th movie, I am at Moonraker. So we're going to have a couple like triple discussion rounds coming up pretty soon.
Well, just based on Mel's bottom 5, I can make a solid prediction what her top 5 is going to be.
Probably. All right, that is now 2. I'm just putting in all these. Moonraker and 1 for You Only Live Twice. That's wild. All right, Mel, your 18th.
From Russia with Love.
What?
Oh, God.
Mhm.
Oh my, we will have words.
Go watch a Hitchcock movie, hon.
I'd rather watch From Russia with Love. Okay, Chris, your 18th movie.
18 for me, and it's going to be a discussion round, is On Her Majesty's Secret Service.
Oh my gosh. Who put I guess I put that lowest, but since I went first last time, Chris, you have not gone first yet. Let's hear from you. Why does On Her Majesty's Secret Service rank where it does for you?
There's just something about the film that's not quite right. The editing isn't 100%. I know that was partly because they're trying to make up for Lazenby. Lazenby is not a superb Bond in any way, shape, or form. I know he had somewhat of a renaissance, but I still think he's pretty rubbish. The supporting cast are amazing. Diana Rigg, Telly Savalas, all good. But every time I watch the film, the editing errors, the acting anomalies just stick out a bit too much for me. There's some gorgeous moments like the flight to Piz Gloria, the skiing down the escape. There's some amazing scenes in this. But overall, there's just so many parts I'm watching it and I'm rolling my eyes and I'm just noticing the jump cut and the sped up footage for one specific punch, which looks really out of place. It's a film that doesn't immerse me when I watch it.
Okay. Mel, what about you?
Just to echo what Chris said, Lazenby. Oh, he's hard to watch. I absolutely adore Diana Rigg. I have the entire Emma Peel Avengers box set. She is wonderful. She helps save the movie a little bit, but I know we're only supposed to talk about like this movie. I ranked 3 movies very close together: Majesty, Skyfall, and Casino Royale, and all 3 of those are lower for me because the leading lady just eats it, and it's just a bummer. I like it when Bond ends up in bed with the woman, and they go off into the sunset together. Now, what redeems this a little bit more for me is I absolutely adore that it's just this wonderful little time capsule from the 60s. The fashion, the psychedelics. But Lazenby is just, I never cared for him as Bond. I mean, as Chris said, the editing that had to be done, the fact that he's voiced over for half the film
as Sir Hilary Bray, I think.
Yes, it's just and also just the storyline. I've read all of the Flemings a couple of times over, and this book is not one of my favorites either. So it's just never one that I've really taken to. And I agree with Chris. Some of the scenery is beautiful in the film. And as I said, I just love the fashion and just that feel of this, going back to '69. But for the rest of it, it's just lower for me. And that's not to say I hate it. Like I can get all the way through it, which is more than I can say for some of the Craigs. but yeah, it's just not a favorite of mine.
For me, the reason I rank it where I did was where I'm kind of with you. Like Lazenby is definitely a dud, and I understand part of it is like he was a model. He wasn't necessarily an actor, and he kind of had to inhabit the role of an actor for one of the most famous movie characters of all time. And where I think this movie shines is the director of the movie, Peter Peter Hunt. Thank you. Because wasn't he like the second unit director for the previous movies?
Yes, he was.
Yeah, you can tell because the action set pieces in this, other than that sped up punch, with the action set, especially like the skiing scenes, are insane. Like I remember when I did the Still Bonding episode on this, I was blown away by the bobsled scene where just like there's a moment where you see a stuntman like get jettisoned out of the bobsled, if I remember correctly. Like it looks intense, but it was filmed so well. It was filmed really frenetically, like just really well done action, especially for 1969. Like I enjoyed those moments. I also enjoy like some of the spy work in it where Bond goes to that office and he's like hacking a safe or he's like trying to steal documents out of a safe, and then he puts the briefcase in like a construction vehicle that's working on the other side of the street so no one will notice. Like stuff like that I just thought was really fun. And also, like you said, Chris, the cinematography for when you come to Piz Gloria, like it's just beautiful. It's such a stunning location. There's lots of stuff to like about this movie, even though the like Telly Savalas is fun as Blofeld, but it's so strange seeing like your third different Blofeld in a row at that point. Or no,
It also
would have been
I feel like
second.
it also hurts Lazenby's performance that Blofeld is far more charming than he is.
Yes, yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah, this is only the second time you saw Blofeld, but if you think about it, you have Donald Pleasance and You Only Live Twice, and then you have Telly Savalas in this one, and then in Diamonds Are Forever, you have the dude who played. You have a different guy playing Blofeld who was Bond's helper in You Only Live Twice. I'm blanking on the actor's name.
Charles Gray.
Charles Gray. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Any other final thoughts on Majesties before we move on? Before I list my next ranking one.
The music's really good in it.
Oh yeah, I love.
Do you know how Christmas trees are grown?
Exactly, absolute belter.
We have all the time in Louis Armstrong. Okay, my 19 is. Oh, I already said Moonraker. Sorry, that's my 19 is Diamonds Are Forever. I apologize, Chris.
Oh, how dare you!
I know that's low for you, probably for you. I'm assuming though, if you put it like soon after, I'm going to be very surprised. I don't think it's going to be anywhere close, but we'll find out. Mel, we're up to 17. What's your 17th favorite Bond film?
For Your Eyes Only.
For Your Eyes Only. That is now 2 For Your Eyes Only. Let me copy and paste.
That's quite outstanding that a Roger is that low. That's your first Roger so far, isn't it, Mel?
Yeah, it's my least watched of the Roger Moores.
And I guess as a... Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, I think it's a good movie. I think it's just, at this point, we're just working in personal preferences. So...
Oh, I'm excited to discuss it. But that one has 2 votes so far. And just to put it in perspective, you know what? I'll do a little temperature check when we get halfway through the draft. So once we get up to like not the draft, I'm sorry, the ranking. Once we get up to like past round 13, then we'll see how many are left over. So Chris, your 17th favorite Bond film?
The Spy Who Loved Me.
The Spy. Ooh, I'm surprised that's so low. Okay, The Spy Who Loved Me.
Again, for the audience and for everybody listening at home, I think these films are good, like very good. At this point, it's just like very good films. So even though it says 17 next to Spy Who Loved Me, it's a very affectionate 17.
That's pretty much everything for me and up here now. I'm into like affectionately liked, even though they're not as high. For me, my 17 is Octopussy. Octopussy. All right, 16, Mel.
License to Kill.
I got a license to kill. That's 2 for License to Kill.
We're going to be waiting a while.
That's crept up considerably.
All right, Chris, what's your 16?
The Living Daylights.
The Living Daylights. Okay.
I think is a discussion piece now.
Is it? No, I have not ranked it yet.
Oh, so I just remember you singing it.
Yeah, let me double check. Did I rank it? No, I have not ranked The Living Daylights. Living Daylights. Okay, for my 16, I'm realizing this, Chris. I have another one of yours that you're going to hate me for. It is Tomorrow Never Dies.
Okay, I'm out. Bye, guys.
I don't blame you. I don't blame you in the slightest. Let me put these ones down here. All right, Mel, you're 15 now.
Moonraker.
That is a discussion round. We have another discussion one. So Moonraker, Mel, kick it off. I think okay. I think it's your turn to start around here.
So this is kind of funny because arguably for the longest time, Moonraker was below For Your Eyes Only for me. And it's actually kind of crept higher and higher. I mean, you know, the thing I love the beginning part of Moonraker so much. it just completely falls apart for me when they go into space. So it's like the first half of the movie I really thoroughly enjoy.
Mhm.
Now the reason, and I'll go into this when we talk about Casino Royale, but I can get all the way through it. I can finish watching it. Um, I'm not crazy about it. I mean, the big battle scene up in space. But like I said, all of these, just to echo what Chris said, all of these are movies that I enjoy watching. It's just going to fall lower on my list. And like I said, for the Rogers, Moonraker and For Your Eyes Only have always been kind of neck and neck for me. But Moonraker has just surpassed it just because I have so much fun watching the first half of that film. I really do. Um, so I feel like that makes up for the parts that kind of make me snooze at the end, the battle scenes. So
Yeah, I'm kind of with you on that. I think the end battle scenes are a little bit boring. I love the beginning. I like Drax as a villain. I also really like it's Drax, right? Hugo Drax, right? I'm not
Yeah.
going crazy. All right. For some reason I was like when I said Drax, I'm like, am I confusing him with fucking Guardians of the Galaxy? No. I just want to make sure I had the name right. But the only scene, the one scene, there's two scenes that jump out to me the most in the movie. One is the pigeon double or triple take or whatever. Where they
I
just
love it. I
it.
absolutely love it. It's the
um,
best.
actually, I also really like the gondola just because it's so silly. It's so dumb. But once again, that's Roger Moore's movie. It's like in a good way, it's silly and dumb. Um, and what is it? I really like the scene. It feels out of place in the movie, but I kind of like that it does. It's when Corinne gets killed by the dogs. It feels like it's like a Friday the 13th horror movie almost with how they shoot it going through the woods and how she's being chased. That scene is really evocative. It doesn't make any sense tonally with the rest of the film, but I still really enjoy it. And it's funny, like you were talking about earlier, Mel, about how like one of the reasons you don't like the Craig films, especially some of like No Time to Die and Spectres, where you feel like they bring that cheesy camp in, and Roger Moore stuff is all that in a good way. I meant to say it back then, and I want to make sure I agree. I bring it up now. I agree with you on that, especially for the latter. I mean, I like the other Craigs a lot more than yours, but like specifically in Spectre, No Time to Die, I'm with you with like that tonality. Like they're so serious, but then like they have all the silly stuff going on, especially in Spectre with like all the car shenanigans and everything. Um, but when it gets to Roger Moore and you get stuff with Moonraker where it's so comedic and so over the top, it's almost like it fits. Like Roger Moore is able to pull that off so well. And as much as like I have some issues with this movie with just the last half is pretty boring, I'm kind of with you. I enjoy this. But Chris, this is your second to last
Mhm.
Bond movie. So we go off on it, my friend. Like what about this movie boils your blood?
I mean, as I mentioned before, it was bottom of my list for the longest time. I was very staunch about that. So the fact it's one higher is actually quite significant. The first half of the film is okay. I mean, Roger Moore's in great form. We've got a little bit of campiness here and there. That's fine. It's just the issue is the fact the entire film was just a kind of trigger reaction to the fact Star Wars was popular. I mean, even the film preceding it, Spy Who Loved Me, had a different film in the credits because they weren't planning to make this. They realized Moonraker sounds like space and Star Wars is big, so let's put Bond in space. And as wonderful as the Derek Meddings props are and how good the space scenes look, it is so out of place. And the entire ending is just a rip-off of Star Wars' Trench Run. I mean, it's just...
Yeah.
It's probably irrational that it irks me this much, but the fact the film is so like money grabbing just really irritates me every time I watch it. I mean, it's, as I say, Roger Moore's got some good performances. Michael Lonsdale as Drax is fantastic. Holly Goodhead is an amazing Bond girl, but I'm just constantly irritated every time I watch this film. It's just really infuriates me, which I'm somewhat gutted about because I don't mind sci-fi and I do like a good Roger Moore film. This one just, it's Bond for all the wrong reasons, and that's what really pisses me off.
That's fair. It's fair. Like I think because I forced you to watch this movie for the Still Bonding, and I think you kind of talked about some of this too for that episode. I just feel bad that I forced you on for your least favorite Bond film.
Oh, it's when it comes to Bond, even if it's stuff I don't like, I'm still want to talk about it. And to be fair, as Moonraker goes, when I'm watching it with, and it's a deprecating eye, but an eye nonetheless. There are still some good positive moments. There's still some bits I like. There's still certain scenes and shots and scenarios that are good. It's just this film has majority more negative than positive.
But all right, Chris, since you were the last one to speak, it's also your turn to list your 15th.
Number 15 is Octopussy.
Octopussy. That is 2 for Octopussy now. Still only 1 movie discussion rounds. We're going to have some crazy later half after this. For me, my 15 is Dr. No. The OG, the original one. So moving up to 14, Mel, what's your 14?
You Only Live Twice.
You Only Live Twice. And that is the second mention for You Only Live Twice. Chris, what is your 14?
Casino Royale.
Oh my god, that is the second mention for Casino Royale. We might have to wait a little bit longer to talk about that one.
I feel like that's one that's going to be an interesting pick to have that low, as I know how other people.
Yes, I'm very surprised. And actually, you know what? I'm looking at my ranking. I'm just thinking about something. I actually am reorganized. Something I have not ranked yet, so it's not affecting everything. But okay. It might have to do with Casino Royale. Anyway, 14 for me is Thunderball. I think you're the one. Okay, so yeah, Chris, you're the only one who's mentioned it. So we'll see where Mel puts this one. That's 2 for Thunderball. Yep. Mel, your 13th.
So this is actually how I ranked my entire ranking. Like I told you, doing lists is very difficult for me. Mm-hmm. So for my 13th, because you obviously have 12 above and 12 below, this is the movie that I'm just sort of like, I enjoy it. I don't absolutely love it. There's no parts of it that really irritate me. That's Dr. No for me.
Dr. No. Okay. 2 for Dr. No. Chris, your 13th.
A View to a Kill.
Oh. I'm very curious how Mel's going to feel about that later on.
I mean, it's deep in the positive films.
That is true. That is very true.
I think Mel will be happy because it's above Casino Royale.
Well, and 13, like I said, 13 is square in the middle, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a good place to be.
And for mine, for my 13, we are at The Man with the Golden Gun. So that is another non-discussion round. We are halfway through this ranking, and we're doing good on time. Excellent. Just as a quick aside, we've only discussed 4 films out of the first 13 rounds. So we're going to have some crazy, crazy moments. The only movies not mentioned at all yet, there's 3 movies not mentioned at all. They are The World Has Done Enough, Goldeneye. 4 films. Live and Let Die and Goldfinger. Those are the 4 films that have not been mentioned at all. Every other film has at least 1 tally against it. The films that are just 1 vote away from getting a discussion: Quantum of Solace, Casino Royale, License to Kill, Living Daylights, Octopussy, For Your Eyes Only, The Man with the Golden Gun, and Dr. No. So there's a handful with only 1 vote. I won't read all those off, but that you can tell listeners how highly we rank those 4 that have not even gotten a vote yet. I'm genuinely surprised The World Has Done Enough has made it this far without someone putting it on their list yet. I would expect it to be lower, but I'm excited to see where this goes. So Mel, we're up to 12 for you. What's your 12th Bond movie?
The World Is Not Enough.
Fucking perfect. That was great. That was fantastic. All right, that's our first tally for The World's Done Enough. Chris, you're 12.
Die Another Day.
I was going to laugh really hard if you said The World's Done Enough.
Believe me, it was tempting to, but What Is Not Enough is a pretty significant position, so I didn't want to risk it.
All right, Die Another Day. And my 12 is You Only Live Twice, which, am I correct? Wait. You Only Live Twice. I must have messed up. I put down 3 things for it. We are finally at a discussion round for You Only Live Twice.
Mm-hmm.
All right. You Only Live Twice. Chris, yeah, we'll start off with you on this one. So, Chris, what for you? Let's talk about You Only Live Twice.
So it's 19th, which is right at the cusp of the I'll throw this on and have a good time watching it. Yeah, it's a pretty standard film. I mean, Connery's performance is very lackluster in this, which I think is one of the major causes against it. I mean, lots of this film spawned numerous cliches, which is always interesting to watch back and see. So like the bald-headed Blofeld with a cat, all that stuff comes from here. So it's always interesting to look at it from that point of view. But something I also enjoyed about You Only Live Twice are the certain set pieces. When they're going through the harbour, and there's that amazing shot of Bond running with the music swelling and all the people chasing him. There's scenes like that which I really enjoy. But then take that and put in the marriage scene and the scene where Bond is very convincingly made into a fisherman. It's a mixed bag in certain ways, and I'm also not the biggest fan of the massive good guy versus bad guy battle at the end. For me, that kind of seems a bit dated in certain ways, and this one especially, where it's ninjas versus Blofeld's goons, for want of a better phrase. Yeah, I like certain bits of it. I like certain bits of it a lot. It's a film, if it's on, I'm not going to change the channel, per se. I mean, when I was growing up, this was one of my dad's favourites, so I've seen this more times than I can count. And yeah, I thoroughly enjoy it. It's just nothing standout spectacular to me. It is a very bog-standard Bond adventure, but bog-standard being a good level, as opposed to being like, it's not necessarily boring, per se. It's not necessarily dull in any ways. As Mel mentioned earlier, it's kind of a wonderful snapshot of Japan in the 1960s. But yeah, it just doesn't. There's certain things I like in the Bond film, and this is missing out on a few of them, unfortunately. But no, a very affectionate 19th, I will say. I do enjoy this film every time it's on.
I'm with you on that, especially like the later scenes with the Bond getting the really culturally insensitive, just basically straight up racist thing where it's like, let's turn Bond Japanese. That's very cringy. But that aside, it's the 60s. I can't even work up my dander on that at that point.
I think there's always going to be certain parts of films, especially from that age, which will end badly. It's going to happen.
But what I love about the film is I love the set pieces, like you said before. Honestly, it's one of the few Bond films that the spy work is really fun to watch, where he gets assigned on this mission. He fakes his death in the beginning. He gets assigned on this mission. He goes to Japan. He has to he's able to sneak into the like Sato headquarters or whatever, and he what is it? No, I'm sorry. I'm confusing the timeline. He meets Henderson, played by Charles Gray, who later becomes Blofeld in Diamonds Are Forever, and he has the meeting with him, like his contact there. His contact gets assassinated right in front of his eyes. He's able to take out the assassin, dress up as him, and pretend that he's injured, and basically ride in the car with that guy's ride, and in the attempt to like, okay, where's he going? I can follow him back this way by pretending to be his buddy. He goes back to Sato Chemicals. He takes out the guy. He sneaks into Sato Chemicals, and then he finds documents. And that is like really fun spy work, and not a lot of Bond movies. Like it's a running joke, at least in Still Bonding, and a lot of the other Bond fans I talk to, where it's like, I love James Bond, but he's not always good at spy work. He announces himself every time he goes into a hotel. He gives them his real name right off the bat. So he's not always the best spy, but I like those elements in this movie where he's doing like really fun, interesting spy work. I like the little Nelly scene, even though it's kind of crazy, but that little tiny helicopter is awesome. There's just a lot of fun stuff about it. But Mel, over to you. What are your thoughts on You Only Live Twice?
Yeah, as I set sort of Dr. No as my middle point. So from here on out, I'm judging everything based, sort of, these are like the middle movies for me, where there's parts that I find slow. It starts to get a little boring for me. I kind of start to lose interest, but there's other parts that I thoroughly enjoy with this. So, it's a solid 14 for me. I do enjoy it. I absolutely, ever since a friend of mine pointed out how the cat absolutely loses its mind during the volcanic battle, I love the battle scene now just because I love watching that cat freak out. It just cracks me up now. So.
Yeah, that poor cat. For those who don't, when in the like, yeah, I let's see, that cat is Donald Pleasance is like has a death grip on that cat, and it's just freaking the fuck out. I love that.
Yeah. So I never paid that much attention to it, but the big battle scenes are again, maybe, I don't know, it's just something that I've never really cared for. I don't really like war movies or things like that. So during those big epic battles, I kind of start to fade, but it's kept it interesting for me now that I can watch the cat freak out. So so there's that. But there's parts of this, the poisoning dripping down the thread is so good. There's parts of it that are great. There's just other parts that is why I ranked it in like my bottom half. So
I getcha. Yeah, I like this one well enough. This is a fun one. This is I said it on the episode that I recorded on it. I guess I'll tell the story quick now. When I first got into James Bond, I started off with the Brosnan movies, and I remember asking my mom, like, hey, can you rent me more James Bond movies? I'd really like to watch more of this. And at the time I had no idea about like there was different Bond actors. I just assumed it was always Brosnan because that's all I knew. And so when she brought me this movie, I'm like, what the hell is this? This isn't James Bond. I was so confused by it. I'm like, what do you mean? And I was so confused by the age of it because, obviously tech in I think this came out in 67. 67. It was very different than movies 30 years later. So it was just a very big, almost like a culture shock to me just to see how different it was. But all right. We're up down to 11. Mel, your 11th favorite Bond film.
Diamonds Are Forever.
That is the second one for Diamonds Are Forever. We are going to move over to you, Chris, for your number 11.
Dr. No.
That is all three for Dr. No, I believe. We are starting off with Dr. No. I'll jump in on this one first. Dr. No, man. I really... The first time I saw this movie, I actually did not like it. It was when I was first going through all the Bond films for the very first time, because I was a Bond fan, but then when Skyfall was getting ready to come out, I was getting really hyped for it, and I decided to watch all of the Bond movies in a row. And when I had tried to watch Dr. No prior to that marathon, it really just did not work for me. I was also in my like early 20s, or not early 20s, I'm sorry. I would have been in 2012, when I first saw it, I would have been in like my late teens, early 20s. When I saw it for the marathon, I was like, I forget how old I was. I think I don't remember anymore. I can't. I don't even feel like doing the fucking math. I was older though, and I remember appreciating Dr. No a lot more the second time around. Just the pacing of it, while it's very slow, when I went into it knowing it would be slow, it gave me a better appreciation of like seeing how they craft their first spy movie, the different things that Connery does in it, like Connery's performance. I focused in a lot more on that. And this movie has, where did I put it at 15? And I could probably interchange it with stuff with like Thunderball. I could probably interchange Thunderball and Dr. No on a given day. So, and Thunderball was my 14. I like this movie well enough. It's definitely not, obviously nowhere near my favorite. It's in the bottom half, but like I like seeing all the groundwork that this movie lays for the later films.
Yeah, I'll agree with that. I don't know what it is about this film. I think maybe because it's the beginning film. I just like the general vibe of it all. Like there's something kind of unique about this film. I feel like From Russia of Love, this next film was very different tonally. I mean, there's some bits which have dated pretty awfully. I mean, the entire third act is pretty horrendous by modern standards. But still, overall, just the way the film is presented, the way the story is said, the way it's performed as well. It could be considered a very slow film in some places, but I'm always hooked by it. I always really enjoy Dr. No every time I watch it.
Mel, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I've already said quite a bit about this, where, it falls right in the middle for me. I enjoy it. There's, some very quotable lines and some very, good scenes in it. You've had your six, and, looking for shells, no, just, I mean, these little staples that, we love Bond for. So I enjoy that. There are parts that are slow and drags, and because this is the first Bond film, they hadn't quite gotten that whole formula down yet. Connery hasn't met his full stride as Bond.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, like I said, I think it's a good film. Ranks solidly in the middle for me.
I screwed up my order. I'm just noticing right now. I screwed up. So my 11 was actually You Only Live Twice. So technically we would have discussed it now. Um, my 12, what I was supposed to put in at 12, and we can discuss it now. So I'll kind of switch it up on my spreadsheet here, is Quantum of Solace. So we can
Why'd you
actually
rank
discuss.
that so high?
I will all right, I can start off with this one if you guys want to. So the reason I rank this one so high is I'm gonna have to do a lot of like finagling around with this. Sorry, one second. The reason I rank this one so high though is I like this. I think this movie has a lot more like. No, let me put it this way. When I rewatched it for Still Bonding, the relationship between Camille and Bond I found really fun and not I shouldn't say fun, but really interesting. And if you're going to go with a broody, moody, brooding, like all that like the dark Daniel Craig stuff that you're going to do, this is a good way to do it. Maybe you missed the camp, and that's fine if that's not what you're looking. If you miss that and that's what you really wanted in a Bond film, and this definitely does not really have it at all, basically. I knowing how Casino Royale ends and how Camille and Bond like work through their inner demons together, like I think this is one of the most character driven Bond movies out there, and I really like how they do it, and I really wish that more. I really wish there was more in the Craig era. I wish there was more stuff like this, because like that's what they were trying to do in Spectre and No Time to Die, and they just kind of completely flubbed it. So with this, I really love the dynamic of Camille and Bond. I understand they don't sleep together, and that was a knock against it at the time, but it makes sense for the characters in the movie. And maybe that's not what you want to see in a Bond movie. That's a totally fair reason to not like it. But I like it because they don't sleep together, because they're two broken individuals who realize that they can't fix each other, that they have to fix themselves. And I really enjoyed that emotional journey they went on. I think the cinematography sometimes is a little frustrating. It's got way too much shaky cam in a lot of the action set pieces. But like when you look at the set pieces out, if you can kind of take that out, the set pieces are really well choreographed. They just are shot kind of frustratingly. Also has one of the best lines in the entire franchise, in my opinion, where like after M's like, bodyguard, you find out that he's been working for Quantum the whole time, and M's like walking down the hallway, she's like, people say they have people everywhere all the time, but they don't actually mean that. That's something florists say. It's like, or I'm paraphrasing it, like it's one of my favorite line deliveries of the entire franchise. So that's why I love Quantum of Solace. The character, the relationship between Camille and Bond, the action set pieces, the cinematography, I love all of that stuff. And also Dominic Green is fucking nuts in the finale. Like it is the definition of a guy who doesn't know how to fight, and he's just like, I'm just gonna go ape shit because it's the only thing I think I'll be able to do to win this. So that's why I like it so much.
Chris, why don't you go next? Because mine is going to have so much more venom, I'm sure.
I mean, I was going to say, I'm glad you could see that. I wish I could see any part of this bloody film. Frankly, the editing is headache-inducing. I'm not really sure why they went for that Jason Bourne-style approach. As much as you like Dominic Green in the ending, he is the most weak-source villain I think we've got in the entire franchise. As much as I like the evil plot about water, it's not conveyed particularly accurately. Craig, while angsty about Vesper, I feel like doesn't come across in this film at all. I think it misses lots of... It's trying to be something else, clearly, and that's Jason Bourne. And even the big action set pieces, like with the plane that's been taken off and being ripped to shreds, even that somehow seems goofy, which is obviously not the theme but they not the theme the film is going for. And I just... It's just kind of a chore to watch. I mean, the entire like sequence where what's his face escapes, and then there's the chase across the Palio in Siena. All of that is just a blur of just horses and people and gunshots and running and sweat and falling through a roof, and it's. My dad had a comment to me, which he said to me when we were in the cinema when we watched it. He leaned over and said, if you notice the direction, it means they're probably doing it wrong. And that kind of stuck out with me because you can't get immersed in this film whatsoever. You're constantly aware you're watching a film just because of the way it's edited so poorly. Music, while I think is good, there's no real memorable bits. The title theme is absolutely abhorrent.
It's my least favorite. If I was ranking the songs, this would be my bottom by far.
Yeah. And the entire thing is just unsatisfying. Like the ending with possibly some sort of closure with Vesper just comes across as depressing, and dropping a necklace in the snow. I don't really have anything really positive to say about this apart from the fact I enjoyed the video game of it.
Ouch. I will say the only thing there was I can't remember you made a point that I think that I don't quite agree with. Like all the others I'm like, okay, I can see where you're coming from. There was one that didn't make sense to me, but I forget what it is. Mel, go ahead, venom away.
All right. So I'm sure that there are people who are listening to this podcast who already hate me because I rank Casino Royale so low, but I will say this movie is one of the reasons why I did. And I know we're not supposed to talk about other movies, but you have to talk about Casino a little bit.
There is, that's fine. There is some element of that. I totally get it.
So going to see Casino, I went to see it with half a dozen friends and of course loved it. At that time, it would have been in my top 10. It was fantastic, had a great time, exciting new Bond. So this is why I have PTSD when it comes to Quantum of Solace. When Quantum of Solace was getting ready to come out, I had a huge party at my house. I had over 40 people at the party. It was all James Bond themed. It was a fancy dress, as they say, across the pond, where everyone had to dress as their favorite character from a Bond movie. Now, a lot of my girlfriends had never seen Bond movies, so they were having fun. They were Googling, looking at, doing research, dressing up as all these different characters. I had Casino Royale playing in the background of this party. Had one of my friends made this awesome Live and Let Die cake that was phenomenal with like Baron Samedi and the hat and the coffin and snakes. It was the coolest thing. And then 33 of us, I took 33 of my friends. They did this because I invited them and had this big party and made a night of it. I introduced 33 people on opening night. We were 2.5 solid rows of the theater. Everyone shelled out money to see this piece of garbage. And keep in mind, like I said, some of these people, this was their first exposure to Bond. And I'm like, oh, no, it's okay. It's okay. I know you haven't seen Bond before, but you're going to love it. Trust me, this new guy that they've got, Daniel Craig, is phenomenal. Casino Royale was fantastic. It's going to be so much fun. After the movie, if I could have crawled into a hole and died, because the solemn, sad faces, we were having such a lively time at the party. And then after watching that movie, the shaky cam, the way they treated Mathis, oh my gosh. And especially
that was heartbreaking,
being a fan of the books, you just throw him in a dumpster. Just so much about it. The fact that Bond all of a sudden is like this bumbling idiot. Perfect example is the Quantum of Solace gift bag. I'm very accustomed to a Bond who would have gone up to the woman at the desk and would have given her a little wink and smile and nod and walked away with one of those little gift bags, rather than beating the hell out of some guy in the bathroom for one. It was just, I just didn't feel like Bond to me. It was depressing. I actually had no issue with the fact that he didn't bet a lady. That was not my issue with the movie. It was just, there were scenes like the whole gigantic rope fight scene that felt like, let me guess, this is going to be incorporated in a video game later, because it just felt like the staging of it. It was just, the plot was very weak. It felt like something out of a Western. Oh, we got to go and blow up old man, Hatfield's dam. He's stealing all the water. It was so bad. I hated every second of it. And like I said, I was just very embarrassed because afterwards my friends were so nice and they were like, well, Melanie, that was a lot of fun. Yeah, that was an interesting movie.
An interesting movie. Oh, no.
Oh, yeah. And the party was over then. Like, I'm like, does anyone want to come back to the house? Oh, I think we're going to call it a night. It was just such a downer film. And so, like I said, that's one of the reasons why, for those of you who are angry at my rating for Casino, that's one of it. This one just pulled that one down a few notches. And it has continued to fall. No Time to Die pulled it down even further. Since we've already discussed No Time to Die, when he goes back to her grave and is like, oh, I miss you. I'm like, we're going back to this, really? Can't this be done?
Yep, I'm with you on that.
Yeah,
I like the action set piece after that, but like the impetus for it just felt very forced in No Time to Die. I'm with you on that.
Yeah, so just the forced thread of a storyline that was executed so absolutely poorly. I bought this in the 99-cent bin. I got it on Blu-ray and I popped it in the player and I got through the title sequence and I had to shut it off because it was causing me anxiety, just reliving that moment of embarrassment, bringing a herd of people to go watch this disaster of a film.
I can totally see why. I totally understand. And the few things I disagree with, but I'll get into that in a moment. But I can, especially with this movie, like I can see why you have that, because, and especially for people who have never seen a Bond movie, this is not a good movie to start. Like, as much as I enjoy this is not a good movie to start a first time Bond person's first Bond movie, excuse me. Because I remember I saw this in theaters. I saw Die Another Day in theaters. I missed Casino Royale. I don't know why. I guess I just wasn't into Bond at that moment, and I got back into it. I went to see Quantum, and I was so confused because I had never seen Casino, and since it's a direct continuation, I was just very, very, very confused. What I was going to say though, Chris, one of the things you said that I was like, well, I want to push back a bit on that. Dominic Green being a weak villain, I very, very disagree with that. I think he's, especially compared to some of the other ones that you ranked higher than this, like you put like Christoph Waltz Inspector is significantly worse. I mean, well, you're going by the whole movie, not just the villain. That's a dumb comparison. But Dominic Green, like his big plan, like I think it's actually very clear. Like the controlling a water supply is so heinous and evil, and it's a lot more real world. Like it's a lot more realistic compared to most other Bond plots. In the sense, like maybe not like in the sense of like just like you blowing up a dam and holding old Western timey as like you were describing, Mel, but like the idea, like I could picture a rich person doing this, like a super wealthy person hoarding all of one resource so that way they can upsell something. Like Big Pharma does that all the fucking time. They'll hoard something and upsell it. You know what I mean? Like
I agree with that, but I'm going to just throw this out as a question. I agree with that. Yes, it is realistic. Yes, it is a plot in Western movies. Is this what we go to Bond movies for? I go for one of the things that I like is the over the top, I've got a satellite that's going to burn a hole in the planet. I sort of like the larger than life, absolutely ridiculous plots that these villains have that are almost farcical. So like I said, for me, and you're absolutely right. is it realistic? Yeah, totally.
Yeah, but if that's not what you go to Bond for, that's a fair point.
But the thing is, as well, is like I like the plot. I think it's pretty decent. It's him I don't like. I think he's not performed particularly well. He's bullied throughout the entire film by absolutely everybody else. He's just not intimidating or somebody you fear at any point in the film. And he doesn't like. As soon as him and Bond get together, it's Bond's going to win. Spoiler: he does pretty much every time anyway. But he just has no presence. That's what I meant by weak sauce.
Really, I found him like intimidating. Like I know he's small and like in stature, but like every time like when he makes a threat, it feels threatening to me. Like I don't know. I like Green a lot, especially like the ending where like everything falls down around him and he just loses his shit. It feels like someone who would like everything's fallen down. I'm just going to go fucking ape shit. And like it's not just it. I like it because like this guy is so desperate that he's just like there's no rhyme or reason to his punches, and that's what to his attacks, and that's what makes the finale so like interesting to me. Plus also like there is some plot confusion with like who the fuck is General Medrano. That's a little bit hard to follow if one like on first watching, but like I don't know. I like this movie quite a bit. I did originally rank it lower, and it definitely takes some points off from it because like it works better if you watch Casino Royale shortly before it.
Yeah.
Like if you watch Casino Royale and then you wait like a year and watch this, it doesn't have the same impact in the slightest.
But I feel like Medrano was threatening. If halfway through the fight with Green, Bond gave him a wedgie and stole his lunch money, I wouldn't have been surprised.
Oh man, you just there's no love for Green here. I thought he was great. I love him in this.
And you know what? I love that you love it.
And that's the whole point of this ranking. Like that's I love the fact that there's like a movie that like, why did you rank that so high? That makes no fucking sense to me. Are you crazy?
Oh, like every Bond fan's got one, at least one.
Exactly. And that's what I love about it. And in all honesty, I'm with you, Mel, with what you're saying, how they go back to the Vesper well, no pun in well, yeah, no, never mind. They go back to Vesper way too often in the movies after it. So while it doesn't ruin the previous Daniel Craig's for me, I can see why it would for you and for people and for someone in general. Like they keep bringing Vesper back when it's like they closed the story out with Quantum. Like that should have been the end of it. Whether you loved or hated Quantum, they closed Vesper's chapter in Bond's life in that movie, and they keep fucking bringing it back.
Yep,
it's really
and every time they did, it would fall like it pulled Casino down further and further and further. So,
but all right, we will continue on. That was I find it so funny. We've discussed now 7 movies, and Quantum of Solace is the one we've spent probably the most amount of time on. That's the biggest divide so far. So I'm excited to see where the rest of these go. So, Mel, your 10th ranked Bond film,
Tomorrow Never Dies.
So, oh no.
Yeah, but it's in the top 10, Chris. Let's talk about The Man with the Golden Gun.
Okay, sorry.
I'm pretty sure we're going to have to wait a little bit to talk Tomorrow Never Dies.
We're going to be waiting a while.
Knowing Chris. All right, Chris, you're number 10.
Diamonds Are Forever.
Diamonds Off. That is a discussion round.
Yep.
And man, I don't know what I'm doing. It's the second time I've marked something as like as 3 tallies, but it's not been. So Diamonds Are Forever. Chris, why don't you kick it off for us? Like, why is it ranked number 10 for you?
This is an interesting one, and one that's completely unique to this film. This was also one of my dad's favourites, which meant it was on incessantly when I was a kid, so I knew it very well. But then with fans and friends I made in the Bond community during the COVID era, I kind of came to watch it in a different way, and all of the over-the-top, silly, goofy camp stuff I actually came to kind of love. I really didn't like this film. If you'd asked me this 10 years ago, I'd have said it's right near the bottom. But for the friends it's made, for the pink ties I've been able to wear, for the jokes we've had with people, for little bits we enjoy, for jokes we make, for quotes we say, it's just up there because now I have a great time whenever I watch it. Is it flawed? Yes. Is Connery too old? Yes. Are there some massive plot issues? Of course there are. But I love it. I just really enjoy watching this film every time it's on now. And yeah, maybe I'm enjoying just some really kind of potentially bad or silly moments, but that's just how I watch it now. And I do have to probably thank quite a few people in the Bond community, one of which is Mel, who's part of that, for just watching it in this way and having so much fun with it.
Mel, you're up next.
Yeah, likewise. And I think this goes back to what you were saying, Josh, when we very first started this podcast, that this is our ranking as of right now. For the longest time, this was my least favorite of the Connerys. And, part of watching the Bond films is, I think, we watch a lot of these ourselves, slap in the DVD or catch it on streaming or something. But when you make it an event and watch these movies with a lot of other people, now you've got these memories tied to it, whether they're bad, like Quantum, or good, like Diamonds.
What are you talking about? What do you mean bad?
Yeah. No, but Diamonds is definitely one that we've had several watch parties. This past spring, a bunch of folks came to DC for a Capital Royale event. We all went to go see the Bond in Motion exhibit at the International Spy Museum. And we had a big pink tie party where everyone was wearing pink ties, and we broke out karaoke and sang Diamonds Are Forever together. So it's those types of moments and memories, and it's a lot easier to have these, I think, with some of the more lighthearted, silly, campy romps than some of the more serious ones. Because it becomes a laugh. Y'all are, we were all wearing these tiny, short little pink ties and having the times of our lives. So this is in the top half for me. But again, making these memories is what has brought it up several notches.
Diamonds Are Forever is one that I think I've grown to like a little bit more, partially because of you, Chris. Definitely partially because of you.
Whoop, whoop.
And that's we talked about our big discrepancies in Quantum of Solace. Like, I like it so much more than you guys. But one thing on the opposite side, where like there's a Bond movie that you don't necessarily like, but you see the passion another fan has and it elevates it. I feel like that's Diamonds Are Forever for me. Like, Diamonds Are Forever a couple years ago would have been lower on it for me, but like being able to talk about, like, being able to cover it and just seeing like some of the stunts in it. I also really love the song. I think it's one of my favorite Bond songs of any of the movies. It's just wonderful. As much as I ranked it 18, so it is the lowest out of the three of us. It's still like, this is a movie I would put on in the background. Like, it's fun. Sean Connery doesn't give a shit, and it's wonderful. It's just so entertaining seeing all especially with Winton Kidd, with Bruce Glover overacting like crazy, and why am I blanking on the other actor? Shoot, he's a jazz musician. Why can't I think of his name? Something Potter. Putter Smith.
Oh yeah, sorry, I just clocked onto what you're talking about.
Yeah, the other actor, because I can never remember who plays Winton, who plays Kidd. I always forget who it is. But like, Glover is overacting like crazy, and Putter Smith is like, he's not an actor, he's a jazz musician who got this role. So the mixture of the two is just so fun. I like Diamonds Are Forever quite a bit. It's a fun movie for sure.
It's sort of thing, as you say, Connery not giving a shit. It's interesting how much of a different not a shit he gives in comparison to You Only Live Twice. Like, here, he's genuinely fun and engaging to watch. You Only Live Twice is just painful.
Yeah, I think part of that also, during You Only Live Twice, wasn't that when he was getting hounded by Japanese paparazzi like crazy?
Yeah, it was. He was becoming very disenfranchised with the whole thing.
Yeah. Any final thoughts before we go on to number 10, or for my number 10, excuse me?
I'd say it's arguably the most quotable Bond film.
Quotable, really?
Yeah. Bitten by the Bug, all those sorts of things. There's so many, like, I didn't even know there was a pool down there. Like, so many different quotes can come up.
I got a brother.
It's a small world. I was out walking my pet rat and I appear to have lost my way.
Okay, fair. You know what? You've called my bluff. I agree with that. It's really funny. There's lots of good lines in this.
I mean, they're all silly lines too, which helps.
The what's line? Sorry,
they're all silly lines too, which helps.
Yes, absolutely. For my number 10, it is The Spy Who Loved Me.
Ah,
So that's two for The Spy Who Loved Me. When we get up to round five, I'll do one more temperature check and we'll see where we're at. So Mel, you're number 9.
The Spy Who Loved Me.
Oh,
oh wow.
snap. We got a discussion round. The Spy Who Loved Me. Mel, why don't you kick it off for this one?
Oh, top 10. I love it. A beautiful, I mean, oh my goodness. It's to me, it's a beautiful movie. I just love all of the ocean and the water. Love Egypt. I had the opportunity to go in 2010 before the fall of Mubarak. And so I just first appearance of Jaws, where he's more menacing
Mhm.
than Goofy. I just think it's a really solid film. I'll tell you where it falls down a tick for me. And again, this is in my top 10. So
Yeah.
I thoroughly enjoy it. I love just the dynamic between, Agent Triple X and Bond, and you know,
Mrs. Ringo Starr right there.
the oh goodness, the her dresses are just phenomenal. But the where it falls down just a tick for me is with Stromberg. I don't feel he's as strong of a villain as, say, Drax in Moonraker.
Mm.
But again, it's a thoroughly enjoyable film to watch. I think you're going to get very different rankings if you're ranking it based off of assigning a numeric value to how strong the villain is and how strong the Bond girl is, and how much you like Bond and the stunts. Like, I've seen different people rank these. For me, it's just personal enjoyment. I love this movie.
Okay, Chris, what about you?
This one's ranked reasonably low for me just because while there are lots of good moments, there's a lot of moments where it kind of slows down a bit too much for me. Like the intro is, God, iconic. There's no other way to phrase it. That's one of the most important moments in the Bond franchise. I think it's probably got the best car chase in any
Mhm.
Bond film too. I absolutely adore the helicopter chase with the Lotus Esprit and how it ends. But again, it's the big ending fight scene which doesn't really do anything for me. And
Lewis
Stromberg,
Gilbert, man.
yeah,
All of his goddamn movies involve two armies fighting each other, one vessel overtaking another in the cold open or early on in the movie, only to have two armies fight at the end of it. Moonraker, The Spy Who Loved Me, You Only Live Twice, they all do it.
yeah. Stromberg, as Mel just brought up, is not the greatest villain. I think as an overall film, I have a great time watching it every time. It's just there's so many other films which I like just a bit more. This is one I'd definitely recommend for somebody as like an introductory Bond film, like one of the first ones they watch, especially if they want to see one of the retro films.
I think what this movie, what really sticks out in this movie for me is like this is I feel like each Bond actor has like a prime example of their version of Bond, right? Connery's his Goldfinger. That's like that's what everyone goes to. This is definitely feels like Roger Moore's to me.
Hmm.
Just kind of like how I would almost say Brosnan. I'm not quite sure what his would be. It could be Tomorrow Never Dies, maybe. But anyway, but with this one, I feel like this is like if you want to know what Roger Moore's Bond is like, The Spy Who Loved Me is like a good mixture of some of the serious, a lot of the camp, a real good feel to it. And I love that. One of my favorite parts of this movie, I ranked this, it's in my top 10 as well. Now I think about it. It was my number 10. I love you brought it up before, Mel, the pyramid scene and everything in Egypt. Like one of my favorite tropes, and it's I'm sure it probably appeared in earlier Bond films, but this is the one where it really sticks out to me, where Q's like, you know what, fuck it, we're gonna move all of R&D to the pyramids. Let's just go there. Let's move it all over there. All the gadgets we're working on, yeah, we're gonna go set up shop in the pyramids. They do it in Moonraker as well, where he does it in like a monastery. They just move all of R&D to like some obscure location just because. The idea is that they already had this there and Q's just going to visit. But I love the idea that like even if you take that approach, they just have an R&D division hidden inside the pyramids, like just because like it's so silly and fantastical, and I love that. I also one of it, if we were ranking the Bond movie like theme songs, like movie songs, this would be my number one. Spoiler alert for if I ever do that. I love this song. Nobody Does It Better is my favorite Bond song, like bar none. Like I really enjoy this movie.
Well, there's so many parts of this film which are truly iconic to the franchise, and that's one of them. The Union Flag parachute. I mean, Jaws isn't my favorite part of any Bond film, but he still became something that is, massively important as it went on.
I feel like he's a pretty solid henchman if you're going to be comparing like across all of the other henchmen, whereas Stromberg might not rank as high against the villains, but I think Jaws makes a decent henchman.
Now, where does Jaws rank against Dominic Green? That's the real question. No, I can't even compare. Jaws is more interesting. I like Green more, but Jaws is much more like interesting, even though he doesn't do as much. But that's besides the point. So, wow, we're at The Spy Who Loved Me. Chris, what is your number 9?
From Russia with Love.
From Russia with Love. We might have to wait a little bit of time for that still. But we are at, all right, so From Russia with Love is your number 9. My number 9 is, and I want to say we're going to talk about, it's a discussion round. Let me double check. Mine is The Living Daylights. I guess I'll kick off with this one because I've had you guys kick off the last two. Actually, Chris, I don't think you've kicked off one for a little bit. Let's start off with you.
Okay. Living Daylights is a bit of an anomaly for me. I ranked it 16th. Like I've said numerous times on this podcast so far, there's some bits I really like the pseudo execution scene. I think is fantastic. The intro is great. This film is an anomaly because I don't know why I don't like it more. I should really, really enjoy this film, but for some reason I never fully get into it. I think Cara as the Bond girl is pretty weak. I think she's probably my least favorite Bond girl for a multitude of reasons. But there's just something that prevents me from really getting into the heck yeah, this is an awesome Bond film feeling that I have for pretty much all of the top 10 films. I really want to like it. I really want to like it more. The music's great. I think Timothy Dalton's performance is pretty good for a first timer. But there's certain parts where like the car chase gets a bit too harebrained. There's too many lines which were clearly meant for Roger Moore that Tim Dalton can't pull off. Cara, as I've said, is frustrating. I don't think the plot is particularly fascinating, and also you don't really know who is the bad guy of this film. Like, there's 2 or 3 different choices it could be. So yeah, I don't know what it is. There's just I completely understand why people like this film. I wish I liked it more.
Mel, what about you?
I ranked it the lowest out of the 3 of us. I ranked it 19th. So I actually don't care for Dalton.
Okay.
Especially coming off the heels of Brosnan, who was a fantastic Bond and just really had this awesome screen presence. I felt as though Dalton was actually overshadowed by a lot of his supporting actors and actresses. I just didn't feel like he had the screen presence. I felt the villains, the villains were more memorable to me, even though there were, like you said, Chris, a couple of them we could have picked. I felt all of them were more memorable than our Bond was. And again, maybe my judgment is a little bit clouded because, like I said, it was coming off of a solid tenure with Brosnan. So that might...
You mean more?
No, Brosnan and then Dalton, right? Oh gosh, I am getting it confused. Dalton and then yes, my apologies. Yeah, because
no worries.
It was coming off the heels of Moore. My apologies. No, 100%. We had this very charismatic Bond. Maybe that's why I hate Craig, because he's following Brosnan. It is sort of, isn't that funny? It is sort of similar, right? We get sort of these, in my opinion, it's kind of the blah Bonds after these very charismatic characters. No, you're 100% right. After, Moore had such a solid tenure, then now switching gears, and there's these jokes that they're trying to put in, and Dalton just can't pull them off. Like, it was clearly, kind of written with sort of this a little bit of the more camp in mind. And the jokes land so flat. But yeah, just, like I said, I don't feel it's a very memorable, it's not a fun watch. It's not like one that I go to pick up as far as like, this is a super fun, it has its moments. I enjoy it. But it's just not one of the ones that I'll go to on the shelf and pop in on a regular basis.
That's fair. That's fair. I think the reason I ranked it so high is um this was one of the first Bond films that felt a little bit more modern-ish to me, in the sense of like the action set pieces felt very much like felt a lot more like interesting than some of the more ones. And I'm a big sucker for action movies, so I like the action set pieces a lot more in this. I'm with you that Dalton can't necessarily pull off some of the jokes. I do think he pulls off more than what Craig was able to do. Like specifically, I love in the beginning where like they're putting the Yuri or whatever into the pipeline, and he's like, "How many people have you done this to? You're the first." And the guy screams and it closes it down on him. Like jokes like that, I think really work, and they're few and far between, admittedly. I think he's a really interesting Bond because I'm seeing the trend here with what you like though, Mel. Like you're saying, you really enjoy the Bonds that can take it a little bit more lighthearted, and both Dalton and Craig are this more serious Bonds. Um, I remember reading that Dalton tried to be more close to what Bond is in the novel. I don't know if that's correct or not because I haven't read the novels. That's just what I remember reading. Um, so I really I like the plot of this a lot. I'm with you. I think you said it, Chris. Like Kara is not that interesting of a Bond girl. I'm with you on that. Um, Also, in a weird sense, like how can I put this? I almost feel like Dalton does too good of a job at some acting moments, and what I mean by that is like when he's out on those dates with Kara, he's looking at her so lovingly. Like it looks like he's fallen in love with her. And at that point in the movie, that's not earned in their relationship. They just met each other, and he's like giving so much like affection through his eyes, like through his eye contact with her. It that's what I remember seeing it and being like, he really likes her, which is cool for if that's what they're going with for the character development. But like it didn't feel necessarily earned. I almost feel like he was acting it too well, and the director should have been more like, hey, you look too happy with her right now. You got to bring it back a little bit. I don't know. Is that crazy?
He definitely said that he wanted to make it closer to the books, and there's a very interesting interview about how he recognized that Bond was a bastard and he wanted to kind of represent that. And I think up until this point, there's possibly an argument to say that he was the best actor to have portrayed Bond, but however, not the best Bond. Like Roger Moore was a very decent actor, a very good actor, and he nailed Bond far more than Dalton did. But Dalton has the Shakespeare background, has far more dramatic roles in certain other ways. But the biggest point that stands out there is the lines that are clearly meant for Roger Moore, like the salt corrosion line, which Roger could have done in his sleep and pulled it off. Timothy Dalton, I'm sure he took like quite a few takes with that, and what we see is just not smooth or suave or cool.
That's fair. I enjoy Dalton's movies are so interesting to me because I know we haven't talked about his. I don't think we've talked about License to Kill yet, right?
Nope.
That's been mentioned by two of us, and I think who's the last one? Hey, Chris,
Me.
you're the last one that mentioned. So we'll see how far up we have to wait for that. But like his ones are like they're so different. Like Living Daylights feels like let me try my take on like a classic Bond film, and then License to Kill was like, and we'll go into it in more depth, but it feels very much like this is an 80s action flick, but we'll dive into that more. I like Dalton's tenure as Bond. Like when I covered it for the show, I enjoyed it a lot more than I thought I would. But obviously like he was only Bond for two movies, so he only had two outings out of that. So let's move on to round 8. Mel, let's kick it off. What is your 8th favorite Bond film?
Thunderball.
Thunderball. This is a discussion round. We have a discussion round. Mel, why don't you start this one? What's about Thunderball do you love?
I think it's, you really hit the nail on the head when you talked about The Spy Who Loved Me was sort of, Moore's movie, like all of these, moments that can be tied directly to him. And that's where he really got his rhythm and everything. I feel like Thunderball is definitely one of those for Connery. Where I absolutely adore Fiona Volpe. There's some phenomenal scenes with her. I think she's great. I do enjoy Largo. Good story. Beautiful underwater scenes. Yes, there are moments where it gets a little slow. I actually blame some of that on the music at certain parts, where I feel like the editing and the music was could have been sped up a little bit to have kept things a little more action packed. But no, I love it. Like, it's in my top 10. Thoroughly enjoy it every time I watch it. And I think this one and Goldfinger are my two favorite Connerys.
Okay. I'll start. I'll do the next one on this. This one, I was actually surprised that I put it up at 14, because one of the knocks that I always hear on Thunderball is that it's just very slow, lots of underwater, too much underwater, some people would say, and it never really bothered me all that much. In fact, I the music that they would choose for it actually kind of fit that do 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 do, or however that little melody goes. Like, it always kind of worked with me. I like Largo as a villain. The eye patch really kind of it makes him visually interesting. Fiona Volpe is a great femme fatale. A Domino is a fun Bond girl. She's a little, like, she's not the most interesting, but I think actually between her and Fiona Volpe, I think two of the most beautiful Bond women. Not like that's the only thing, but I like it. But it like, watching it later on, there's lots of slow parts, but at the same time, I like the espionage part of it. I like, how I shouldn't, like, Spectre's plan is interesting. I like how Bond kind of cues in on it and how everything kind of ties in with each other. I also really like the little fun fact that when Connery was swimming through the pool at Largo's estate, that he didn't know the shark was going to come out, and when you see him jump out of fear, that's legitimate. I love stuff like that, like those little fun facts. Like, it's a fun enough movie. But Chris, you ranked it the lowest out of all of us. So what put it down at 22 for you?
I don't mind the water either. Just tagging along with you two. I think the only time the water affects me is, hey, this has come up again. The big battle at the end, which we know doesn't really work for me. I think the entire ending is kind of poor, especially when it gets onto the boat and then it's clearly that sped up background scene and Largo jams the controls by falling on the steering wheel. Whatever. That stuff, I think, ends the movie on a bit of a dull note for me. I don't know what it is about it. I just can't really get into it the entire time. I think Largo, while a good menacing villain, could have been a little bit more charismatic in a way, especially considering the sort of lifestyle he had. Connery, I think, is on okay form, but I think the reason this is because this film follows Goldfinger, which I think is the gold standard of Connery Bond films. I just think it's just not as interesting. The plot's good. The book is kind of a similar form to me, where I don't necessarily mind it per se. I'm just not going to go back to it all too frequently. I think Felix Leiter, Rip Van Winkle, whatever his name is. Yeah, he was okay as Felix Leiter. The Q scene felt very forced. I don't know what it is. I just don't particularly have a good time watching it. I can appreciate it for how well it did the travelogue aspect, how well it captured that part of the 60s, and especially 60s fashion when it comes to the women, especially. Domino I love the dresses she wears in that. But I don't know what it is. There's a few standout moments, I guess, like the Junkanoo scene.
Yes.
Shout out to the Junkanoo dog. The she's just deadline is great. Fiona Volpe is fantastic as well. Amazing femme fatale. But that's the thing. When I'm thinking of things I like, it kind of stops there, which is a shame. It's another film like Living Daylights. I'd like to like it more, but every time I watch it, I kind of just go through the motions with it.
Just drift off. No pun intended with all the water, but. All right. Any final thoughts from anybody on this movie before, Chris, you list your number 8?
I think, one of the things that makes this fun for me as well is this was really sort of the height of the spy craze, Bond, infatuations at that time. And maybe it's because I do work in advertising. I just love all of the different ads and gear and hype and posters and toys, things that we don't see now with Bond films. Like, we haven't seen these things for ages. You'll get little tiny die-cast cars and such. but you don't get the degree of merchandise that was put out at this time. I think Thunderball was really the height of it. It was on everything, and that's one of the things I appreciated as well, is getting to see there's so many different collectibles of this time frame, specifically with Thunderball, that's associated with this film. So that makes it a little added bit of fun for me.
I'm trying to remember, like, I think one of the reasons I ranked this where I did too, not to continue on with this, but because I know we're going to get to your number 8, Chris, but like, this was one of the VHSs I had as a kid, and I watched it a lot. And I remember that the two that I watched the most of, like classic Bond, was this and Live and Let Die. Believe it or not, those were the ones that I watched the most as a kid. And I think, I don't know what it was about this movie. There was just a lot about this movie. I think I'm trying to remember what about it just really like intrigued me so much. But yeah, I like this well enough. But all right, Chris, your number 8 now. We're up to your number 8.
Time for a discussion. For your eyes only.
For your eyes only. You know what? I'll start off with this one. I don't know if I don't remember. I was trying to kind of keep it even. Now I can't remember who's done as many start off. So I'll kick it off. I'll kick off this one real quick. For your eyes only, man. I like this one a lot because it's Roger Moore's attempt at like being really like serious. I know I ranked it pretty low, but I still enjoy a lot of different aspects of this. I love Locke as like Emil Locke as like the henchman. I love the double cross of like realizing the person you thought was Bond's friend is the bad guy the whole time. I like Luigi, the character Luigi, a lot. The places that it like are really kind of like comes down in a couple ranks for me. One, BB Doll is annoying as shit. I understand the joke of it. I understand, like, you know, Roger Moore, like this super young. It's almost like they're playing into the trope that Bond dates women much younger than him, and like this is to the extreme. And Bond's like, absolutely not. And it's funny to watch Bond squirm, but it just made me uncomfortable. Also, the weird random like ice rink scene where hockey players just fucking show up out of nowhere, like that was weird. But I still really like the plot. I love Topol in as the end up being like Bond's ally towards the end of the movie. Like he's so fucking affable. Like he's just so enjoyable to watch. Like I really enjoy lots of elements for this. I know I put it down at 20, which I'm pretty sure I ranked it the lowest, I want to say. And even then, like I ranked it the lowest. And even then I really enjoy this. But Mel, why don't you go over, and then Chris, since you ranked it the highest, you'll get the final word. So Mel, what are your thoughts on this one?
Well, Roger Moore is definitely my favorite Bond. I enjoy the film, but it is my least favorite of his. I just, of his Bond films, this is probably the grittiest. Because there's certain scenes in here where, he's a little bit more badass than some of his other, appearances. I don't know what it is about this one. I feel as though I just can't get into it. I've heard you say, Chris, a few times, I want to like this more, but I just don't. That's this movie for me. I want to like it more, but I just don't. It has its moments. And it's what did I rank it? I ranked it 17th. So, all of these films I still enjoy watching, but yeah, it's just not one that I would gravitate to over, the other ones that he's done. So,
Chris, you ranked it the highest. You put it at 8. What do you love about this one?
I love Roger Moore in this film. I think even though he's known for being kind of, the campy, lovemaking Bond, I think he can do like kind of hints of gritty very well. And I've always thought about this film, Roger Moore's clearly getting on at this point, but it actually kind of works because of the way Roger plays it. Like one of my favorite scenes in all of Bond, which is the chase through the chase on the skis, which starts off, goes onto the slope, goes through the lodge. When he's being pinned down by the henchman, and he's like, the henchman's got the sniper on him, Roger does look like believably worried, which he should be in that position. I love the dynamic of a younger guy facing against an older spy, but it being Roger Moore, you still have faith he's going to win because he's awesome like that. And it's just, I like the way it's played, and I like the him shunning BB Doll links into him possibly being an older gentleman spy a bit more. And of all the Bonds that could pull that off, it's going to be Roger. I just like so many different bits of it. I just really enjoy watching it. I think the soundtrack, even though a little bit weird in places, is fantastic in others. I like the return to Earth, pun not intended, after Moonraker. I love Topol in it. He's so good. He's amazing in it. And yeah, it's just one of those films I consistently enjoy. And I know there's reasons why I shouldn't, but just like I can't explain why I want to like Living Daylights more, I just really enjoy this film. Every time, even there is the terrible stainless steel line. I just have a great time watching this film. I really enjoy it. I like more with a dash of seriousness because I think he portrays it really well, which is why there's one film of his left, which is arguably probably his most serious one, maybe.
I would say For Your Eyes Only is the one that's more serious than the one, no pun intended, more serious. Than I think there's 4 left that we have not covered, one of which has no votes.
I do enjoy that there's 4 left single-handedly because of Mel.
Well, no, there's 2 because of there's one that I haven't voted for as well.
Oh, okay. So my apologies, Mel.
So, all right, moving on from my number 8. It's the first time this one has been brought up, and yeah, I still stand by it. It's GoldenEye.
Ooh,
GoldenEye is in my number 8. The first time. That's a first. That now there is only 2 movies that have not been mentioned, and I will say them if they make it to round 5. We'll find out. So, GoldenEye is my number 8. Mel, up to you for number 7.
Octopussy.
hey.
That is now 3 for Octopussy. That is a discussion round. Mel, why don't you go ahead and start it off then?
I'll talk about why I loved this movie. I love Roger Moore in this movie. I love the chemistry he has with Maude Adams. I love having sort of a female boss. She's, I love her presence in this film. She comes across as just so elegant and just smart, put together, calm, cool, collected. There's just so much about this. I love VJ. My heart truly broke when he was killed. We've got good henchmen, good villains. Good storyline. It's fun. It has its fun moments. And then it has, like I said, when VJ dies, it has its heartbreaking, heart-wrenching moments. But this is a fun watch for me. I always enjoy it every time I put it on. I have nothing bad to say about it. I feel as though a lot of times what I'll hear people say about this is, Roger Moore dressing up as a clown. Well, of course he did. How are you going to go undercover at a circus? It's just, it's the start of this movie with the airplane coming out of the horse's rear end. Just there's so much of it that I absolutely adore. So that's why I ranked this in my top 10.
I think I'm gonna. Actually, you know what, Chris, you go next. I'll go last on this one.
Sure thing. Octopussy was 15 for me. This film is just always a good time. I always enjoy watching it. It's one where, yes, take a big dose of sense of disbelief and you have a good time with it. Every time I watch it, like the plane scene at the beginning with the Acrostar jet is fantastic. I think it looks really cool. And some of the filming techniques they used for it are really quite groundbreaking for its time. The one thing that sticks out for me is that there's a 20-minute segment of this film I really love, and that's when the train is heading towards the circus, Bond gets ejected from it, and then he's just trying to chase it down. And for what is a kind of comedy-based film, it's a really tense scene. And yes, I know that he dresses up as a clown halfway through, but if you consider the fact he's trying to be taken seriously whilst in that, and then he has to scream that there's a bomb in there, and then suddenly the pitch changes, I just love that entire scene. I remember watching it one of the first times because I watched it a bit as a kid, kind of forgot all about it, then watched it again when I was like 10 or 11 or so. It was genuinely edge of your seat stuff. And that entire sequence I really enjoy, be it the frustrating people in the car, the person in the telephone booth, just the way it builds that tension is a standout part of that film for me. And it makes me kind of ignore the massive Union flag balloon, all that stuff later. And yeah, it's just a film I have a really good time watching. I think the bad guy, very good. Kamal Khan is a fantastic villain, very suave, very slimy. Really enjoy that about him. What was the other thing I was going to say that I liked? Just popped into my head. Blast, I've completely forgotten. But no, it's just a film I can put on at any time and have a good time. And this is what I mean about, like, kind of 19 and up being films where if you throw it on or if you say, hey, Chris, do you want to watch this film? I'm going to say yeah.
I'm kind of with both of you on this. I obviously I ranked it the lowest out of the three of us. I put it at 17, but like what I really, really like about this, actually, no, I'll start off with the few things that I don't like. And by don't like, it doesn't ruin the movie for me in the slightest. I do enjoy watching this a lot. The crazy cute, actually bizarrely enough, the Q scene at the end in the balloon and everything I like because it's just so stupid, like it's so comically over the top. I kind of enjoy it. But like I think this movie's biggest weakness is actually the way it tells its plot, not the plot itself. It is very confusing as to like what all the different gems are used for and who's smuggling what and for what reasons. Like you can follow it if you really pay attention to it, but it's not laid out very clearly in the movie. And it took me a few watches to really understand like which villain is doing what in this, like who's the actual villain, what's their actual plan, what's General Orlov doing, and all this other shit. Like, how is he involved in all this other stuff? Like, it's a little confusing.
I remember the one part I wanted to say, but I forgot. Stephen Volkov is incredible in this film. He is hamming it up to the nth degree.
And the way he says Czechoslovakia is one of my favorite line deliveries in the whole franchise. Czechoslovakia. Like,
in the morning, I'll be a hero to the Soviet Union.
So good. What I love about this movie, I love the gadgets. I love how every gadget is used and the way it's used. I love how Bond like sneaks around in Kamal Khan's like palace or whatever. I love even the goofy elephant chase and the Tarzan scream, even though that's dumb as hell. It's still fun for me to watch. You mentioned before, Mel, with the whole airplane hangar opening with the fake horse butt and the plane coming out, like that's all wonderful. Roger Moore is fantastic in it. And like, yeah, like you were saying before, Chris, how like 19 and up is like good for you. For me, it's like 22 and up. Like all of the movies that we're talking about now, I really genuinely enjoy. And I ranked so far out of the ones that we've talked about, Dr. No, I ranked higher than this, but like I really enjoy Octopussy a lot. Like Maud Adams coming back is great. She is a great Bond girl. She's she's fantastic in this movie. Even with I got her line confused. It's Magda's line with that stupid little, like, it's my little Octopussy line. I hate that line just because it makes me uncomfortable, but it's funny. Like, I understand it's meant to be a joke because, Roger Moore's face, he plays it off. He's like, okay, then.
Yeah.
I love so much about this movie. It's a really fun movie to watch.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm happy it made it up this high.
Yeah, and Roger's hitting his stride at this point too. I mean, I think he was very good. In
hitting his stride. It's his second to last movie.
But I think that at this point he's making, but he's like consistently hitting his stride. At this point, it's been Spy Who Loved Me, Moonraker, For Your Eyes Only, Octopussy, where he's been on top form.
That's funny. Any final thoughts, Mel, before Chris goes on to his 7?
No, I'm ready for 6 whenever y'all are.
All right. So, Chris, your number 7.
The World Is Not Enough.
Oh, my goodness. That is the second one for The World Is Not Enough. Okay. World Is Not Enough is number 2. Or that's the second one for it. For my number 7, it is the second mention of this. It is A View to a Kill. A View to a Kill. All right, Mel, your number 6. We're up to you.
Die Another Day.
Hey.
Die Another Day. That is a discussion round. We have a discussion round here. Die Another Day. Chris, why don't you start off with this one?
This is actually interesting. It comes up here because I think I look at this film very much the same way I looked at Octopussy. Take a good dose of sense of disbelief, and you'll have a great time with this film. And I know lots of people kind of, they get on it a little bit for some of the CGI, maybe for some parts of the story, which are a little bit over the top and overdone. I think there's just an insanely fun film here, which you can watch. Brosnan is hitting his stride just in the same way Roger Moore had.
On his last movie.
Brosnan is perfect. Obviously, I'm a bit of a Brosnan fanboy when it comes to Bond, so this is going to be my preference. Toby Stephens as Gustav Graves is phenomenal. Like, just deliberately making a bad guy that is an even smarmier version of Bond is such a good idea. I absolutely adore it.
Yeah.
And even though it's got some of the most ridiculous scenes in the franchise, they're still somehow badass. Like, people will jump on Die Another Day and say what they will about it. But tell me a single Bond fan who doesn't think that the ejector seat car flip is at least a little bit cool.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, Halle Berry, I think, is a fantastic Bond woman. Rosamund Pike, a fantastic henchwoman. It's one of those films, again, I think when I first, back like 10 years or so ago, I probably was hating on it a bit for being, it's a bit too silly. It's not serious enough. Now I'm like, just lie back, get some snacks, have some fun watching this film. It is such a fun, enjoyable film.
I'm going to go next, I think, on this one. I ranked it the lowest. I put it down all the way at 24. It's my second to last. I will say I might, looking back at this, I might consider switching it with No Time to Die, but because No Time to Die, these two can switch. Kind of like how I mentioned before that like Diamonds Are Forever and Octopussy may switch. Or Moonraker, sorry, it was Moonraker will switch. Die Another Day and No Time to Die, the dying movies will switch. But at least for this one, the reason I ranked it so low is that this was a movie I saw in theaters and I loved as a kid. And then as a kid, I was like 13 or whatever when it came out. And then I liked it. And then when I rewatched it, it is the worst type of like when Bond has his one-liners, when you have the one-liners in Bond movies, like I understand not every one of them is going to stick. And, the world's not enough. We'll get to that one in a little bit. That one has that really awful one-liner at the very end. But like what bothers me about this is just like the one-liners from so many different characters just fall flat on this. It is so many of them just don't work for me. Bonds are fine. Brosnan pulls them off, but like Halle Berry with the your mama joke, I can, when she replies to Rosamund Pike going, I could read your every move. And then she stabs her in the chest with a Bible or whatever. And she says, read this, bitch. And then like half of the shit Toby Stephens says is like, this is what a 13-year-old thinks sounds cool until they say it out loud. And then it's fucking stupid.
And that's great for a villain. I love that.
It's fun to watch, but there's so many moments where it's like it just doesn't work well with me. Like, don't get me wrong, like I like movies that have stuff like that. I'm a huge fan of the Fast and Furious movies. Like I've been telling everyone on here, like after Still Bonding, it's going to be Still Family, and I'm covering all the Fast and Furious movies. Like there's a line in Fast 7 where Vin Diesel and Jason Statham are having like an argument where there's talking about like who had to live on meaner streets. And Vin Diesel has a line where he goes like, the thing about street fights, the street always wins. Like, what the fuck does that mean? But it works because the whole movie is is like every character in that movie is so absurd. In this one, it has too much of a mixture of like Bond, like Brosnan being able to pull off, relatively speaking, the crazy dialogue. There's so much about like the writing in this movie that I don't enjoy. And I don't mind the plot. The plot's not awful. It's a classic Bond villain plot, like the absurd over the top stuff. Like I enjoy all that. Some of the set pieces just go a little bit too out of the way for me. Like especially when he's like with the freaking when he's on the ice surface on that jet car or whatever it is that Gustav Graves has, and he's using it to get away from Icarus. like there's so many moments I couldn't suspend my disbelief watching. Like when he launches himself off the cliff and he puts the anchor out the back to stop him from completely going off, and he dangles. He's going at like Mach 2 or whatever the fuck. Like he'd be dead. He would be a pile of goo if he did a dead stop, assuming the cord could even handle that. Like it just, there's too many things. And then the tidal wave surfing and Brosnan in front of a bad green screen. Just, there were so many things that just really ruined it for me. The things I loved though, I love the set pieces. I love the clinic in Cuba. I love the waking sleeper agent in Cuba. I love I even don't hate the invisible car. I don't mind that. I like John Cleese well enough in this movie. I also really like how Bond's kind of like on the run from MI6, and that's been something that's happened a little bit too often in the Bond movies for my liking, but it works here. So there are things that I like about this movie, but for me it doesn't quite hit it all that well. Ironically, the Madonna song is not it's like midway in my song rankings, where most people I would think put it on the bottom. So it's kind of weird how like that's higher for me than most people.
I like the song, but also next time you watch it, imagine the writing for between Bond and Gustav Graves. Imagine they are literally just like middle schoolers, like squabbling, which is what it's reduced to. I love it when you look at it from that way. And it's like, I'll beat you in a sword fight. No, I'll beat you in a sword fight. Yeah.
I don't know. Anyway, all right, Mel. Let's round this one out. Maybe bring us up a little bit, so I'm not leaving us on a cranky note.
Oh yeah, I mean, and again, everyone. This is the thing that I love about Bond, is it's just like when you ask someone their favorite ice cream flavor. You know, we all have very different tastes, but overall we like the same thing. I absolutely adore this movie. It's so much fun. When I was talking about how the seriously delivered lines that are supposed to be touching and meaningful come across as dopey to me, I love intentionally dopey silly lines. I love I can read your every move, and she knocks her in with the art of war, very punny.
Yeah, it wasn't a Bible. Thank you. The art of war.
It was the art of war. So I love just those little punny, silly, ridiculous over. And we talked about this earlier with regard to the water. Like, I love the absolute over the top, ridiculous schemes. I love the sword fight. I love the ice palace. There's just so much about this movie that is fun for me. The henchman having diamonds in his face. I'm like, that'd make a killer Halloween costume, just, and then going back to something that we had shared earlier, I was in, living in Louisiana back when this came out, and not only did I see it in the theater, I had a big viewing party at my house and had a bunch of my friends over, and we just had a whale of a time, just, laughing, chatting, having fun. So I just have really positive memories for this. It's the last time I can remember that they played a Bond song in the nightclubs, which was always so cool. Like, you'd be out with your friends going dancing, and then, Die Another Day would come on, and everyone would hit the dance floor. And I just, when is the next time we're going to get the DJ doing a mix of a Bond song? I just absolutely loved it. So it's a fun movie for me with strong memories.
I like it. And it's funny because this was actually the first Bond movie I saw in theaters, and I ranked it pretty damn low. So that's interesting. Chris, unless you have any final thoughts on Die Another Day, Chris, we'll move on over to you.
No, just absolutely love it. That's all. What are we on, number 6?
Number 6.
Goldfinger.
Oh, well, I'll gosh be darned. It's not a discussion round for it, but my number 6 is also Goldfinger. I thought I was going to get yelled at for putting it at number 6 and not higher, but right off the bat, there's 2 votes for Goldfinger right off there. So, okay. Mel, back to you already for number 5.
Goldeneye.
Goldeneye. And I think that's only the second mention of Goldeneye, so it's funny. I was looking at this the last 2 rounds you have sparked a discussion and Chris and I did not. This is the first time in 2 rounds that you haven't sparked a discussion. I can't speak. Chris, over to you for your number 5.
Live and Let Die.
Oh my gosh. This is so with this right here, every single Bond movie has been mentioned.
There we go.
This is that was the last one that was yet to be mentioned. And my number 5, it's going to be a discussion round. It is The World Is Not Enough. I'll kick this one.
Yeah.
I'll kick this one off. The World Is Not Enough. The reason I put it at number 5 is this was my first Bond movie that I ever saw. I didn't see it in theaters. It was one of those things where when I saw it, it was because back in the day, with cable, periodically cable companies, to get you to subscribe to the nice, more expensive package, they would give you free trials of HBO or Cinemax or Showtime or whatnot. Well, we got a free trial of Showtime, and they back then they would get, if you subscribe to this channels, you could see movies from the theaters only a couple months or however what it was right after the movie came out in theaters, before it came out on home video, because back then the turnaround time from theater to home video was a lot longer. So we actually got a full uncut, unedited version of this, and my dad taped it on a VHS tape, and I watched it incessantly. Like the opening scene of Brosnan going into the bank, and now as an adult I realize how ridiculous this is, but this is the nostalgia goggles speaking, so I can't help but still love it. How he rips off the blinds cord, and he ties it around the dude's belt, and he uses it to rappel out a window. That's insane. There's no way that even if it could hold him, it's way too, there's no blinds that are that long, but still it's really cool to me as a 12-year-old when I saw it. The boat chase to start off, the music is fantastic. Even though the boat chase is silly too, because why does Q have a wet dock on the 3rd floor of MI6? I don't know, that you just can launch off into the Thames. I don't know. But I love all of that. I really like a lot of the set pieces, even though Denise Richards is not good in the movie. I love the nuclear arms site. I love Bond sneaking out from Elektra's manor. There's not a single moment in this movie that I don't love. It is one of my favorite movies. And taking the nostalgia goggles off for a second, I think Elektra arguably is the best Bond villain. I'm not saying the most memorable, but in terms of the plot twist of not realizing she's the villain, how she's so good at playing so many people, and she's so smart and she's so cunning. I love Elektra as a villain. Sophie Marceau is fantastic in that role. Just there's so much that I love about this movie. It is by far my favorite Pierce Brosnan movie, even though I think, did I rank one of his higher than this? No, I didn't. This was the one I ranked the highest. I love The World Is Not Enough so much. But I've been talking a lot. Chris, why don't you go on for the next one here?
I like that What Is Not Enough gives Brosnan a bit more of a serious role, following Tomorrow Never Dies, which was a bit more jokey in a way, more fun per se. I like how this film kind of takes a somewhat serious role, especially with Bond and falling in love, quote unquote, having affections, that sort of thing. It's kind of a perfect mix of where Bond was at that time. Yes, you've got a silly boat chase, but then you've also got Brosnan doing an acting tour de force in certain scenes. I think his performance in this is really strong. I mean, you mentioned earlier about about how sometimes Bond actors seem to have a role that they really nail, and there's a theory that it's normally their 3rd. So Goldfinger for Connery, Spy Who Loved Me for Moore, World Is Not Enough for Brosnan, and Skyfall for Craig. And yeah, it's a very enjoyable film. I think it's a very well made film. It's a very well shot film. It's a very well scored film. It's just one of those films where it seems to tick all of the boxes for me. And it's got a very good, like, cold kill with the "you couldn't kill me, you'd miss me, I never miss," all that jazz. I love those little things. I like, as you said, the plot twist where Renard isn't actually the main villain but is actually kind of just a henchman all along. I think Sophie Marceau as Electra King is a wonderful performance, especially her scenes with Judi Dench. I mean, at this point, M being out in the field wasn't a completely saturated plot point, so it was actually quite unique at this point out in Turkey. I even think, what was it, Goldie Looking Chain, who was played Bullion. I think even he's good. Like, he's just the best form of, like, creepy, slimy, backstabbing-y person. Zukovsky is fantastic again. I mean, he's great in both the films he appears in, and if VJ was the one which made Mel sad for his death, it was Zukovsky, who I find is the heartbreaking one, because he's just such such a magnetic sort of character. Like, you just love it when he's on the screen, and he's got some great one-liners in this film too. Like when he walks in and sees Christmas Jones and goes, who was it? Where is... I need to call security and give them a raise, or something like that. It's just those little moments, and it's just such a nice little film to watch. Appreciate those moments, appreciate the acting. Because I feel like we had a serious film in Brosnan with Goldeneye, then we had kind of a lapse for Tomorrow Never Dies, and it came back to serious. And I'd say more serious with how he treats Electra, like the whole scene where it's like, oh gosh, I've completely forgotten it. Oh bugger, this is my Bond card being revoked here. Something about hurting, blah blah, can't feel alive. Oh, have I forgotten that quote?
Oh, there's no point in living if you can't feel alive.
The whole scene, like, no point in living if you can't feel alive. Like, he's really going for it there.
He's pissed.
Yeah, and personally, I love seeing that side of Brosnan Bond. But yeah, overall, just a really enjoyable film. Desmond Llewellyn bowing out very gracefully, I like as well. A very good ski chase. Kind of was missing a decent car chase because it gets destroyed by the helicopter, but the big action set pieces, it's got lots of the things that I really look for in a Bond film. So I really enjoy The World Is Not Enough.
Mel, what about you? Let's round out this discussion.
No, again, this is in my top half. I ranked it at 12, so I love, it's great. I think, I'm looking at my list here. All of Brosnan's are in my top half. I really enjoy his films. I feel like the two of you said so much, and I'm just going to be sort of echoing a lot of what you said. As for the four of his films, this is probably my least favorite of the four, though. That being said, I've always really kind of struggled and have gone back and forth. Maybe it's just me. I've seen this film so many times. Electra as the villain. She's clearly kidnapped and suffering from Stockholm Syndrome. So while she is a victim, it's also very pitiable.
Yeah.
She's also to be pitied. So I actually struggle with that. When you mentioned that, she makes a great villain, the surprise element was definitely there. The fact that she is so vicious and just cruel. But then I just keep going back to, this was not set up from the beginning. She was genuinely kidnapped. I believe this was part of Stockholm Syndrome. And yes, she ended up taking it out because, she wasn't ransomed. But at the same time, like I said, I don't care for her as much of a villain as some of these others who are just truly, purely evil. I think there's still a little bit of sympathy that can be had for her.
Well, what I like about her is that it's not Stockholm. Like, she reversed Stockholm Syndrome Renard. Like, Bond has that line where he's like, Renard didn't turn you, you turned Renard. And that's what I like, that you're right, she is a victim. She gets kidnapped, and it's almost like that moment when she realizes that her parents are playing politics instead of trying to save her. That's when her villain switch turns on, and she doesn't give a shit about Renard. Like, you see it later on in the movie where, like, Renard is trying to be, like, close to her, and she's just like, nah, fuck
Mm.
you, like you can't even feel anything anyway, like why should you care? And you can see, shout out to Robert Carlyle, fantastic performance, you can see he's like visibly like emotionally hurt, and so much so that he punches like that ceramic thing just to like get his emotions out and show her like, this is how devoted I am to you, because he needs that attention from her. And that's what I think makes her such a great villain, is that like off camera you don't see any of this in the movie, it's just all shown through action later on, which is great. They don't do a whole bunch of exposition, it's a throwaway line that if you notice it you can realize that the whole thing is her villain switch got turned on when she was kidnapped, and then that's when everything, like she didn't necessarily have her plan then, but she turned Renard and then had him under her thumb and used him to further her real plan, or once she figured out a plan to basically kill her father and take over his pipeline and also sabotage the other pipeline so she can be rich. Like I like her villain turn because it's subtle until it actually happens. I love this movie so much. But okay, let's move on. We just finished round 5. Not a single movie, or sorry, every single movie has been mentioned. 3 movies only have 1 vote against them. That's the only 3 I'm going to mention: Skyfall,
Mm.
A View to a Kill, and Live and Let Die. Those are the 3 movies that only have 1 vote against them. All the rest have either been discussed or have 2 votes. So, Mel, kicking off round 4, your 4th overall favorite Bond film.
Goldfinger.
And that is discussion for Goldfinger. Mel, why don't you kick it off? Not only because you just put it up as your current one, but also because I think Chris and I went first last time. So, what do you love about Goldfinger?
Sure. I mean, it's my favorite of the Connerys. Obviously, it's in my top 5. I think it's just because it is so quintessential James Bond, and there's so many tropes that that are pulled from this film. It's a fun watch. I thoroughly enjoy it. Love Honor Blackman. Gert Frobe is fantastic. It's a fun movie every time I put it in. So that's kind of why I love it. And I understand it is, it's like, oh, it's such a stereotype. Well, there's a reason that there are all of these parodies made off of it. This is what really kind of set the tone, in my opinion, as far as what we expect to see with James Bond. We want to see all of the different gadgets and, the girls and the action and great villain. The that iconic scene of him strapped to the table. No, Mr. Bond, I expect you to die. Highly quotable. I love every bit of it. I think this is one of the things that has made all of the subsequent Bonds great, was the success of this one.
Absolutely. And like Chris and I were only just 2 ranks below you. We both ranked this at number 6. This one I think is super fun, not only because Sean Connery is fantastic in it, like you can really tell how comfortable he is in the role, but also like the plot is as silly as some of the Bond movie plot, like villain plots get. This is surprisingly grounded. Considering, like, even though it's like I'm going to irradiate the entire American supply of gold, so my gold is worth more. Like, that's silly, but at the same time, it's not completely that far fetched for a Bond villain. Like that, compared to other Bond villains, this is much more grounded. I also love Gert Frobe's performance, even though that's not his voice for the entire movie. I still can't believe that. It's bonkers. I really, really love the gadgets in this. Even the stupid duck hat at the beginning of the movie, that silly duck hat that he wears.
It's a seagull.
Is it a seagull?
Mm-hmm.
You would know. You are the bird expert. I trust you on that. I like the gadgets. Obviously, the DB5, the iconic car. I also really I like Felix Leiter in this, even though I'm pretty sure Keck Linder is the actor who plays it, and I only remember that because the name is so ridiculous. His name is Keck, or CEC, however you pronounce it. Yeah. Fun fact, I'm just going to shout this out. So Honor Blackman plays the character Pussy Galore, the Bond girl in the movie. She has a flying circus. There's a podcast called I Was There Too, and he interviewed Matt. I've shouted it out before. I want to shout it out here. Matt Gorley is the host. The podcast is no longer running, but you can still listen to episodes. Like the feed is still up. And he interviews people who had small roles in famous scenes of cinema history. So the example I always like to give is in Star Wars, he interviewed the stormtrooper that Obi-Wan does. When Obi-Wan says these are not the droids you're looking for, he interviews the stormtrooper that gets that line delivered to. So he finds people who do these really cool small roles for famous scenes. He interviewed one of the pilots, one of the actresses who plays one of the flying circus pilots in this. And at the time, she was only like 16 when she did the role, which is kind of crazy. But yeah, I like this movie a lot. Chris, what about you? What are your thoughts on Goldfinger?
Mel summed it up perfectly of what she said, and she used the one word I always use to describe Goldfinger, which is just quintessential. It is just the quintessential Bond film. It is like, for what is classic Bond, this paved the way in so many different ways. I mean, it's such a departure when you based it against From Russia with Love, but this was what became popular, and this was the template many Bond films tried to create again, and arguably never did in the classic era. I mean, it's probably one of the most discussed about Bond films, so I'm not going to say too much, but yeah, just massive positive things about what is a very enjoyable film. Very good performance by Connery, very good performance by all of the cast. Gert Frobe is fantastic as Goldfinger. Yeah, it's arguably the perfect template for a Bond film. Obviously, there's some films I prefer a little bit more, but when it comes down to it, this is essential viewing for anybody who's getting into James Bond. This is a port of call they have to take if they're going to get into Bond.
Absolutely. Any final thoughts, Mel, since I want to give you the final word on it. Any final thoughts on Goldfinger before Chris says his number 4?
No, I think let's go ahead and move on.
All right, Chris, your number 4.
All right, this is one I'm going to be doing a lot of defending for. License to Kill.
And that is a discussion round. License to Kill. I always find it funny. License to spelled, I guess, the British way with a C instead of an S.
Yeah.
Chris, it's perfect timing. It was your turn to kick it off. So kick it off, my friend. Why is License to Kill so high for you?
It's a very gritty Bond film, which I know isn't most people's cup of tea, and arguably it's the least kind of Bond villain, like in many ways. Like, the grand scheme isn't that big; it's just drug smuggling. But for how it stands out, and for the fact I watch it more as a vengeance film from Bond's point of view, I really, really enjoy it. The set pieces are fantastic. The setting is amazing. I think Dalton, despite not having the screen presence that other Bonds have, he plays this role of Bond perfectly. I mean, it's a very humorless sort of film because of what happens. And I think he portrays it perfectly. I have a great time watching this film. Sanchez as the villain is incredible. He is so good. I mean, this is a point that Mel made earlier, that actually maybe he is better and more charismatic than Bond, which I think works in this scene because Bond is just blinded by rage. I like the entire setup. I like I don't know what it is. It's just every aspect of this film I really thoroughly enjoy, down to the soundtrack, down to the Bond girl. Like, Pam Bouvier is one of the best Bond girls, in my opinion, for me. She is absolutely fantastic. I love the whole kind of like evangelicalist church thing they have, and the whole bless your heart, the whole compound. The action scenes, while brutal in lots of places, I think work. And the biggest thing that I hear people saying is that for them it was too, this is a point Mel has brought up with me in the past, for many people it was too Miami Vice. It felt like a copy of Miami Vice 3 years too late. However, for me, growing up, we didn't have Miami Vice broadcasting on TV regularly, so for me it was a brand new concept, like this whole kind of drug smuggling thing, the 80s, very 80s setting and fashion, especially in the in that area. So I thoroughly enjoyed it. I can see why it would be lower if you've seen all of the 80s drug films a million times, but for me, I hadn't, so that's why it ranks so highly for me.
Mel, why don't you go up next?
I would just like to bring up a point that Chris made about Moonraker in rating that one so unbelievably low, which is how angry you get when you watch it, because it was literally just on the heels of the space craze, and the success of Star Wars. And that is 100%. You are such a hypocrite because that is what
Hey.
this is.
A hypocrite, if you will. Uh,
But no, I mean, I saw this in the theater after 5 years of the success of Miami Vice, and every single film being surrounding coke and drugs running, and we had been seeing this for 5 solid years, and that's all this was Eon jumping on that bandwagon, trying to cash in on some of the success because that's what was popular at the time. I nothing at that time, going to see it. I was pissed. It was the absolute lowest film on my ranking for a long time. Now, enough time has gone by that I have other things to be angry about. Quantum of Solace, but
no.
but like
What were you talking about?
yeah. So like with time, there are certain things that I do appreciate, sort of in how Majesties was a 60s time capsule. This is very much an 80s time capsule. So I can go back and watch it and appreciate it. And so, as I said, I mean, this has climbed a little bit for me. It's, up to 16 now out of the 25. But at the time, I was livid because I felt like this brought nothing new or original to what we had been seeing for the past 5 years. So that's my hot take on it.
I'm very upset because you've made a really good point, Mel, and after this I'm just going to have to look at myself in the mirror for a long time because that is exactly right. You're 100% spot on with why I hate Moonraker. Oh my god. No.
To be fair, it seems like, so it's funny. A movie that we all have an issue with in the Bond franchise is a reactionary Bond film. And both of you guys put Quantum of Solace incorrectly, at the very bottom because it's a Jason Bourne clone,
Yeah.
right? I'm not going to argue that. You're 100% right. The way it's filmed is a Jason Bourne clone. Spectre is basically Captain America: The Winter Soldier. That was my 25. It's basically a copy of the Marvel movie, so much so down to the plot twist where they're trying to put everything together into a universe. It's a reaction to the Marvel Cinematic Universe, trying to turn Bond into that too and doing it awfully. Moonraker, Chris, reaction to Star Wars. And then this, very much a reaction to 80s drug films, 80s action films like Die Hard, Lethal Weapon. Like Michael Kamen did the score for this, didn't he? I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
And he did a lot of popular action movies in the 80s, so like it even sounds very similar. I will say though, I enjoy this one I think a little bit more than Mel. Where did even though I put it down pretty low, like I know I'm pretty sure actually I put it lower than Mel. But so I don't feel quite as harshly about it, so that's interesting. I wonder if I fucked up my rankings. The reason I liked it, the reason I have fond memories of it though, is when I first saw this, it was when I was in my first like Bond craze. I was really obsessed with James Bond, and I saw it at a time when I've said this before on the podcast. I grew up very conservative and very Christian, right? And because of that, I wasn't allowed to watch R-rated movies, just period. And this movie had a lot of violence for a PG-13 movie. So this was like the one movie that I could be like, yo, man, his head exploded. Look, how I can watch violent stuff too, right? Like it was my gateway into feeling like one of the cool kids who were allowed to watch R-rated movies when I was not. So like, with the shark eating scene and the head exploding and the pressurized tank scene, like that thing, like that really, like as a 13-year-old being like, see, I can watch cool stuff too. And like, even like, bringing back David Hedison, who was in Live and Let Die, right? Yeah, he was Felix Leiter in Live and Let Die, and the fact that they brought him back, though to get married though to like the actress who plays his wife, it was a weird age difference for me. It was really weird to look at. But his not death scene when he gets maimed by the shark, it is so visceral too, not just because of like the the fake blood in the water and everything, but like the "I'll see you in hell, Sanchez," like he is so like he is chewing the scenery, but it works so well. Um, I do think, yeah, I'm with you, Mel, where this is too reactionary. It's too similar to all the stuff that was coming out. It really didn't do anything new for movies. I mean, it was a new direction for Bond in general, but not really for movies because, like you said, you'd seen it all before. It's very much in the same vein as everything before. But what I liked about it, beside like when I first saw it, it was that it was the most violent one out there. So I felt like I could fit in with the cool crowd for once. And then also, I really really liked how Bond befriended Sanchez at first. And I know I don't know how close that is to I think that's similar to something in one of the Bond books. I don't know off the top of my head, but um I love that though, how Sanchez thinks Bond is on his side, and like Bond staying at his house in this really luxurious place. Like for some reason that was just always really cool to me, just seeing Bond work from the inside to figure out how to stop this guy. And even like the smarmy like preacher played by Wayne Newton, right? I want to say that he was really fun to watch. Like there's lots of stuff that I like about this movie, but this is in the section where, like I said, 22 and up are movies that I enjoy. It's just not something I would put on very often. That's kind of what brought it down so much for me. I would not want to put this movie on in the background. It's not something that's like a comfort food movie for me. I watched it for Still Bonding, and I probably won't watch it again for a while.
Oh.
Like I will at some point, of course, but it just really didn't quite make it for me. But any final thoughts on this movie, Chris, before we move on to the next one?
Well, I really like it.
I think too, though, like Josh, when you were talking about how he befriends Sanchez, I mean, that was literally every single episode of Miami Vice, because Sonny was going in undercover. So he would he was Sonny Burnett, going in, he had this cover. It's just
he even did undercover like James Bond does. James Stock.
It's so funny.
London Financial Times.
So Mel, would it have been improved? Would it be improved, say, 3/4 of the way through the film, he gets a concussion, then turns into the bad guy for the rest of the film?
I know, right? I will pay this film a compliment, though, because I think one of the best parts of this film is Pam Bouvier. She is a solid Bond girl. She's fantastic. I mean, again, I think the reason that this ranks 19th, and I'm sorry, I ranked it 16th. My apologies. I ranked it 16th instead of lower is because of her. I think she's just a solid Bond girl. When you look at all of them, as far as which can carry their own, which can really help Bond out in a pinch. How skilled she is. Just she's a great Bond girl.
That I agree. She was one of my favorites. I love the Roadhouse scene with her, where like they're in a bar and they just start the bar brawl. I know that's not very Bond-esque, but it's still a fun scene in general.
Oh, I love how she tuts at Bond when she's holding a massive shotgun.
Just blows a hole through the wall for them to escape. It's great. Escape on a boat. But all right, my number 4. It's another discussion round. It was, I think this. It might just be the first triple discussion round, because we did Goldfinger, we did License to Kill. This one here is Casino Royale as my number 4.
You need to let Mel start with this one.
Yes, by all means, Mel, go for it.
Oh yeah. Okay. So yes, I ranked this 22. When I did see this in the theater, loved it. I have read the book several times. I thought it was a great interpretation of, bringing the novel to screen. This is one, as I said, with every subsequent Craig movie, has fallen down for me considerably. And it's gotten to the point now where I cannot watch the whole film. I can't. I will watch the first 53 minutes and stop it exactly at 53 minutes. It's when Bond's at the airport. He stops the terrorists from blowing up the plane. They arrest him. They've got him, pinned against, the ground or whatever with his hands behind his backs. And he looks up and there's the beep and the terrorist explodes. And then that's when I stop the movie and go, well, that was a great Bond film. he completed his mission. It got rid of the massive plot hole that follows. And again, it's one of those things. When I first saw it, it struck me. I thought it was great. But now I really struggle to listen to those lines exchanged between Bond and Vesper. They come across as so corny and sappy and cheesy to me. I just can't do it anymore.
I can't do it anymore.
Hey, Chris has my back on this one. He's been to my house.
Oh yeah, there's one time we were getting ready for a night out or something, and there's about 10 minutes left, and I was downstairs, and I was like, oh, let's flick through Netflix and see what's on. And I saw continue watching Casino Royale, and it was literally to the moment where that scene directly ends. Mel had watched up to there, stopped, and then left it completely.
That's funny. Chris, why don't you go next, actually? I'll round this one off.
Casino Royale is one of the odd ones. It's the only one that is consistently falling lower every time I do a review of my top films. For me, it's 12. I think it's a very good film. I really enjoyed the film. I think it's a bit long. The third act is definitely far too stretched out. I think it's a strong entry performance from Craig. It does kind of throw the Bond genre on its head a little bit, which I think was massively appreciated at the time. But I don't know what it is. Every time I watch it back, I think I enjoy it. I have a good time, but there's other films I'd probably want to watch just a little bit more, especially from Daniel Craig. I understand why it's many people's favorite. I can fully understand that. I don't think it's been aided by some other of the films. Thinking that this film is still being brought up in Spectre and No Time to Die does kind of affect it retrospectively. It's just a very solid film for me. I enjoy it. The third act, as I said, a bit too long. But overall, yeah, when I first watched it was a solid top 5. When I watched it in the cinemas in 2006. And just as time's been going on, it's been slipping down, arguably for films which I find a little bit more fun in certain ways. Not to devalue this, because I think this is serious Bond done very well. There's just other films I kind of look for. And there's other things I look for in Bond. And yeah, the kind of overly done romantic love story, while it's in the book and while it was a formative part of Bond, it does get a bit tiresome, especially as that seems to be all we've had for the last 5 films.
For me, Casino Royale ranks at 4 because it's unlike both of you where it's been going down on your list. It's been actually going up on my list for me. I do think the reason it has resonated more with me is that when I first saw it, like I said, I didn't see this one in theaters. I saw it on home video afterwards, and I remember not being all that interested in it, and I don't know why. I didn't quite understand the plot originally the first time I watched it. I think I was just not really paying all that much attention to it. But I ended up, when I started rewatching it for in preparation for Skyfall, I rewatched it. I was like, holy shit, this is really good. The parkour chase scene really got me. I also think I'm going to steal a point from the James Bonding podcast that I really like. In the parkour chase scene, when the guy jumps over the drywall and Daniel Craig bursts through it, that was a character moment for his Bond. That showed every bit of the type of Bond Daniel Craig was going to be. He's not the finesse Bond. They keep referencing it in all the movies. He's the blunt instrument. So much so that he burst through a fucking wall. I love that scene. I love the relationship with him and Vesper. As much as I will say, I do think when they try to do the romance side of it, it feels a little bit rushed. It feels earned at the end, but it still feels a little bit rushed. It just kind of all right, we're here at the casino. Now all of a sudden we're I won the poker game. I won Texas Hold'em, and now we're just going to go, now we're in love with each other. And that felt a little bit rushed, but they acted it so well. I can kind of forgive it a little bit, but I love the chase scene, the parkour scene, like I mentioned. I love the whole tanker chase at the airport. Like I remember when I first watched it, I completely forgot about that whole chase scene in the airport. So I was like, oh, there is another action set piece that I forgot. And then the torture scene is iconic. Like Daniel Craig with the lines, there's an itch on my left ball or my left nut or whatever he says. Like it's fantastic. I really love his performance, and it was such a great way to start off his Bond. And as much as the last two ones, his last two ones, Spectre, No Time to Die, are on the bottom of my list. A lot of the Craig stuff I do really enjoy. But something that you mentioned, Chris, where like I think you bringing something up, you brought up this one point that really resonated with me about how you're looking for something a little bit more fun. I think almost in a weird sense that when Casino Royale came out, we were so used to like not campy Bond, but more kind of like the action comedy stuff. So people were looking for gritty stuff in general. Hence Jason Bourne. Hence a lot of the Daniel Craig stuff is gritty. Now we're at a point where, like, with not to get into anything serious or political, but in the current state of the world and news and everything, we just want something a little bit more escapist. And the Daniel Craig Bond movies are not what we want right now. And I like them. I think, especially, I know I like them more than you, Mel, but I think both of you, have a very good point in that they're a little bit too dour. They're a little bit too serious. And I know, Chris, you and I have both ranked one pretty high that's coming up, but like, even so, I think there's the one that we ranked higher, I think, is the most fun out of his 5 ones.
Yeah.
So like
I think
it's just a lot. Like, it's too serious. Sorry, finish what you're going to say.
You make a great point. At this point, after Die Another Day, which wasn't, I know it was commercially successful, but not critically. I mean, this was a breath of fresh air. It's just the issue is that breath has now lasted too long and it's become somewhat of a wheeze.
That is that's a good way to put it. That's a very, very, very good way to put it. Okay. Well, we are that unless, does anyone else have anything to say about Casino?
Oh, for those out there, I fully understand if it's your favorite. I can fully understand why. I just don't feel the same way.
I mean, that's this whole list. I mean, half these, like, I'm very curious. It's funny, like, the only one we've all like really had a big disagreement on is Quantum, and that's only because you guys put it all the way down. Like, I put Spectre down low, and you guys all put Spectre down pretty low. I'm the only one who put Quantum mid, and you guys hate it so much. It's really interesting to me.
And majority rules means we're right. So
yeah, but host has right. So
well played.
Oh my god, Mel, up to you now. We're into the top 3. Woo! You're number 3.
The Man with the Golden Gun.
Hey.
Ooh, discussion round for The Man with the Golden Gun.
This movie, and again, like, to piggyback off Chris, I can understand why Chris doesn't like this as much. I love this movie so much because it has everything. Like, if you could take the kitchen sink and throw it into a Bond movie, this would have it. It's fun. I like the mano-y-mano that he's matched with Christopher Lee, and I think it's a nice little spin on it, a nice take, especially because, as I said, I'm not a big fan of the really huge battle scenes. So I quite liked this. I think there's a lot of intricacies in this movie that are actually really serious. The whole part with Andrea Andress and her, the abuse that she's enduring, her death, that's quite sad. Mary Goodnight, some fun, silly little bits when she's hiding in the closet. As I said, it has everything. This was the first movie, I did put a lot of thought into which movie I wanted to show my son to introduce him to Bond. Now, at the time, he was 7 years old. And so many movies, children's attention spans are not that long. They're usually playing with toys or doing something else when they're watching TV. I wanted something that he wouldn't get bored with, that would hold his interest. And I chose this one because even the slower parts when they're talking with M, the office is, my son was just cracking up laughing. The office is all catty corner. It's all crooked, when they go on the ship and everything. Yes. So I just felt it had the car that turned into a plane, and, the, another visit from Sergeant Pepper, which is really silly. So again, I've got a very strong memory associated with that because it is the first one that I introduced my son to. So there's like I said, a really good memory that we share for that. But I've always just had a really fun time with this film. I think it's a nice little departure where it's this, personal battle versus, some much more bigger nefarious plot. So that's why I rank this so high. I think, and again, I think everything, the scenery is just fantastic. The costumes are great. Roger looks good. I love the whole fun house. There's just so many elements of this movie that I truly, truly love.
I am kind of with you on that. I think this is one of the most fun Roger Moore films, just period. As much as I love Christopher Lee as Scaramanga, but I never found him all that really intimidating. Like, I never understood, like, people always praise his performance, and he's really good. Like, I'm not saying he's bad, but I just remember watching it and just not feeling any emotion one way or another with his performance. Not, once again, not to say it's bad. It just didn't resonate with me. With that said, the parts that did, I love the setting. I love where the travelogue element of it. I love the they now call it the James Bond Islands, but where they film Scaramanga's lair. I love the weird freaking casino with the baskets going up and down, and I don't understand that in the slightest, but I love it. I love the kind of, like, it was kind of a bit of a reaction to, like, like the rise of, like, Bruce Lee and, like, kind of like the martial arts films in the 70s, but it works. It feels very much like Bond's own interpretation on that in a good way. It doesn't feel like a complete ripoff, kind of like what Moonraker did. Or Moonraker's feels a little bit more pandering, I should say, than what this did. But I love Roger Moore's performance, and I love the flying car, like you mentioned. Like, there's so many fun ideas. The only real downsides I have with it are, other than, I can't even say Christopher Lee's a downside. It just whelmed me. It just didn't do much for me. But the main thing is the freaking corkscrew sound effect for the car flip. One of the most amazing, impressive stunts put to film, especially for the time. And the sound guy's like, let's just put a corkscrew in there. That's going to be fucking funny.
I will defend that until the day I die. And the reason is because, if anything, I think it punctuates it. I think if you had just scored music over it, it might not have as much impact as, you need something to really call out that moment. And of course, it's got to be in Roger Moore's era, because it is silly and fun and ridiculous. But I actually like that it punctuates it.
See, I think if they just didn't do any, I agree that a score would have ruined that punctuation part of it. I think J.W. Pepper screaming punctuates it enough. Like, I don't think you even needed the sound effect. Just show the whole thing and then have him go, "Ah!" at the very end. It would have been enough for me. But Chris, throwing it over to you. You, I think, ranked it the lowest out of the three of us. So what are your thoughts on The Man with the Golden Gun?
Yeah, it's 20 for me. This is another My Dad classic, which means it was on all the time. There's just... a lot of it is missed potential, I feel, in some ways. I think Christopher Lee, contrary to what you feel, is fantastic in the role. I don't know what it is. Obviously there was a huge amount of script writers on this one and issues going to and fro. And I feel like that's incredibly apparent in how disjointed certain parts are. And also some characters just aren't right in this. Roger is a bit too brutal at certain points, especially when he sees Anders for the first time. M is grumpy for no particular reason and even takes it out on Q at some point. It's almost like Uncanny Valley. Like, this is a very fun film. It's a very fun watch. This is absolutely one that I would throw on to watch on a lazy Sunday when I've got to, clean something at the same time. It's absolutely love it for that. There's just too many bits here and there where it just stands out for the wrong reason. Like the martial arts bit, which was kind of shoehorned in, and then they drive away for no real reason. Lots of it just feels like, oh, we need to get to this next scene. Let's just make it happen this way and hope they don't notice. There's lots of enjoyable stuff. The scenery, the locations are fantastic. The villain is fantastic. I really love Scaramanga's Funhouse as an intro to a film. That is so good. There's just lots of other bits where the dots don't quite connect fully for me, and I can't help but notice that while I'm watching it. Roger, although he has his unnecessarily harsh moments, does kind of get back into it later in the role. And the moment where it's him and Scaramanga eating dinner, and there's kind of like some very tense back and forth is very good. The issue is I see scenes like that and go, why couldn't the rest of the film be like this? I see some really great moments in this film and just wish it was consistent across the entire film.
I can understand that. I will say what this honestly ranks higher for me is just because of the iconic line from Knick Knack, from Christopher Lee. Like I said, I'm trying to make it clear also, I don't hate his performance. It didn't blow me away the way I was expecting it to, I guess. Anyway, but he delivers one of my favorite lines of the entire franchise. Thank you, James Bonding Podcast, for making me aware of this, where he yells from across the island for Knick Knack, Tabasco. The very beginning of the movie, and I love that. Just the idea of just shouting across an island for random condiments.
Yeah, he's got some great moments. And when Anders is dead and sitting in the wrestling ring, and he sits down and then talks about how difficult the shot was to pull off and how well he did it because he's that sort of egotistical. Amazing. Love it. Really love those scenes. Like really, really love that part of it. And even when they're at the dinner and he's like, come on, Mr. Bond, we both kill for pleasure or something like that. And it's just those sort of turns, almost his Hammer horror coming out in him. I really enjoy and really appreciate. And I think, testament to Roger Moore, he bounces off him very well. Like, obviously I said Timothy Dalton to that point was probably the best overall actor to have played Bond. You see talent when you can play against somebody like Christopher Lee and bounce off as well and appear to have kind of chemistry, even in an aggressive way. So that's a really good scene, and it is that speaks volumes to Roger Moore's talent as an actor.
I love Roger Moore, man.
Oh, God,
he has. I know, Mel, he's your favorite. He has grown into like my number 2, I want to say. I think Brosnan's... Daniel Craig was my favorite, and now it's honestly kind of gone back to Pierce Brosnan, followed by Roger Moore, and then Daniel Craig. Well, maybe Connor even high. I don't know anymore.
It's fascinating you admit that to two people, one of which is a huge Roger Moore fan and one of which is a huge Brosnan fan. So we're going to be very happy with that news.
Oh, yeah. I love those. I've grown to love them. But Chris, we're over to you now. Your movie number 3.
GoldenEye.
And I believe that is a conversation for GoldenEye. Am I correct? Yes, it is. GoldenEye. So, Chris, why don't you throw it off? Sorry. Why don't you kick it off with GoldenEye?
Just one hell of a film. I mean, this is we're now in the top 3. And for me, pretty much each part of these films are perfect. There may be flaws, but I think as an overall film, GoldenEye is consistently brilliant from start to finish. I mean, it starts with an amazing stunt, kind of akin to the Spy Who Loved Me jump. It's kind of reminiscent of that. And then you've got this amazing intro sequence. I like the soundtrack for certain parts of this film, especially when they do the Bond theme with percussion, which I think is really unique and really cool. Then you've got a very interesting plotline with Sean Bean, who plays Alec Trevelyan fantastically. You've got great side characters, like Arumov is a standout in this. He's absolutely fantastic. Isabella Scorupco as Natalia is a fantastic Bond girl. And granted, it's more on the serious side, especially for Brosnan. I think it just, for the first Bond film after the Cold War, it got it so right. And I think it's helped by a fantastic story with just enough maniacal supervillain stuff to make it work and be Bond. Just talking characters, Boris Grishenko, the comic relief, still somehow works, especially in that scenario. It's a cold film. It's a kind of a gritty film in certain ways. But for his first film, Brosnan is very suave. He looks fantastic in the role. He pulls off every scene perfectly. And it's just one of those films. I don't have enough positive things to say about it. The entire ending is incredible. All of the sequences in St. Petersburg, for example, like fantastic. It's one of those films I will gush over, like I will for the next three probably. It's just a film I enjoy every aspect of it to the biggest degree I can. I have such a good time with this film every single time I watch it, and I will admit the video game which I played from a very young age did also affect how I felt about this, because I love that so much. I believe that also kind of leaked over into this and was a part of the reason why I love the film so much. It's just a fantastic film, and I have such a good time watching it.
Absolutely. Mel, over to you for your thoughts on GoldenEye.
Yeah, I mean, this was my number 5. So also, I really do love it. Everything that Chris said, and I would just say Natalia is, again, we were just talking about Pam. Natalia is going to be up there as well as one of the most competent. She can take care of herself. I mean, she's on her own for a good chunk of this whole adventure that we're going on. And again, I think it's someone that, as a woman, you sort of look for those roles. You want your, someone strong who doesn't need to always be rescued by Bond, who rescues him in some instances as well. You see much more of a sort of a partnership there. So no, absolutely love her. Just to add on to everything that Chris said. Just a fantastic, first appearance by Brosnan, I think.
I'm with both of you. I love this movie. I know I ranked it the lowest, but it's still in my top 10. I ranked it at 8. I love this movie. I remember seeing when I first got into Bond. I know I keep going back to that era, like the Brosnan era is where I first got into it. I remember discovering the order of in which his movies came out. GoldenEye, Tomorrow Never Dies, The World's Not Enough. And after I saw The World's Not Enough, I went back to Tomorrow Never Dies, and the way it always felt like to me was that in my adolescent brain at like 13 years old going through this, it felt like the action got cooler the farther back it went. Like the opening scene in GoldenEye in the chemical plant, how Brosnan gets on a conveyor belt, turns it on, and then shoots the barrels, and they all fall down on the soldiers. And he sprints out on an airplane, like on a runway, and he catches up to the plane, and he the plane falls off or flies off the edge, and he has to jump after it and skydives towards it to land in it. Even though that would normally be silly, they film it in such a way you're like, yeah, I can believe that. Like, yeah, I buy that. Sure. It's wonderful. And I'm with you as well, Chris. Like the GoldenEye game definitely plays a part in this for me. But believe it or not, actually, The World Is Not Enough video game for the N64 I enjoy more. And that's maybe also why it helped with World Is Not Enough being up at 5 for me. But GoldenEye is wonderful. It's such a great introduction to a Bond, also directed by Martin Campbell, who did Casino Royale, who has done 2 fantastic introductions, like first Bond movies. So whoever is the next Bond movie, if Martin Campbell is still up for it, even though I think he's in his I think he might be in his late 70s, early 80s at this point.
He's getting on a bit.
I mean, I'd still be down for it. Also, fun fact: Martin Campbell directed Pierce Brosnan. He's 81. Holy shit. Martin Campbell directed the Jackie Chan and Pierce Brosnan movie, The Foreigner, which is fucking fantastic if you haven't seen it.
Yeah, I'd recommend that too. That's a good film.
But okay, let's move on. It is my number 3, and believe it or not, it is going to be one that it's not a discussion round. I don't think so, because I believe Mel has still yet to list it. It is Live and Let Die. Which I believe, Chris, you have mentioned it already. I want to say, yes, you're at number 5. So that is 2 votes for Live and Let Die. And with this, the only Bond movie that has only 1 vote is Skyfall. So we'll see where this ends up. Mel, up to you for your number 2.
It looks like we're going to be talking about Live and Let Die, because that is my second favorite.
Woo.
So
Live and Let Die. You know what? We might as well, the person who votes for this to like kick off the discussion will kick off the the person whose placement kicked off the discussion round will kick off the discussion in said discussion round. So Mel, go ahead, talk about Live and Let Die.
This is always right up there with my number one. So if you could ask me on another day, Live and Let Die might be my number one. I go back and forth with this and the other one. Grew up in Louisiana, so I'm going to start right there with that. And this is one of my first introductions to Bond. Like, like Chris, my dad would play these movies and I'd probably half watch, but I remember this one very clearly because of the Louisiana connection. And as a kid, I thought it was the absolute coolest thing that there was this British spy tooling around the swamps of Louisiana, and he was just so cool. He's just, so suave and debonair, and all of those boat sequences. Of course, boating, it's a huge sport down south. And this is one of the things that really sort of got me into it. I can't remember all the details. I bet my dad picked it up. If I recall correctly, and again, I'm trusting my memory that isn't as reliable as it used to be. But I think he went up and picked this up at a video store like one holiday season when everyone was at home, and I just was absolutely drawn in by it. It captured me. Baron, as I mentioned earlier about the cake, the quantum cake, Baron Samedi and Live and Let Die. There's a reason that my friend made that themed cake for me. And that's just because I really do love it. Voodoo is very prevalent still to this day. There's still believers and practitioners of it. And I love that they incorporated that into the storyline. And yes, it has its flaws. Yes, it doesn't read as well today in today's environment.
A lot of Bond movies don't.
Yeah, 100%. And I know, like we were talking about how all of these other films, Eon just sort of went along with everything that was popular at the time. And this is no exception, with all of the success of the blaxploitation movies and things, and this sort of being a part of that. But it is, like I said, it's near and dear to my heart. And again, part of that is just because this is one of the things that drew me in as a Bond fan.
It is... I think I went second last time, didn't I? So Chris, why don't you go second, and I'll cap this one off because I love this movie as well. So Chris, why don't you talk about it at first?
It's just such a fun watch. I mean, not fun in the same way as Done Other Day is. It's just a lovely little Roger Moore adventure. Even though it's his first film and he's drastically different from how he is later, I still think there's something so watchable about him in this. He is... there's something about Roger Moore. He carries such an amazing screen presence, and there's very much an element of the Persuaders in Roger Moore in this, which I really enjoy because I really like that series. I mean, there's kind of a level of polish with this film, which I really appreciate. I mean, there's the America angle for a start, which I automatically enjoy anyway. When it comes to scenes like the crocodile jumping bit, that could have been silly, but the film is polished so well it works. Like that could have been a really awful, top 10 worst Bond moment. But in this situation, it works, especially because Bond films back at this time still relied on actually doing the stunts. So while it does look good because it's actually been done, you also respect the person who I believe was called Kananga. You respect them for doing it and actually pulling it off. It's helped by a fantastic cast. Yaphet Kotto as Mr. Big is fantastic. I think Jane Seymour, even though it's much more of a kind of damsel in distress role, still plays an effective Bond girl as Solitaire. I just love how Roger Moore looks and carries himself in this film. Mel said specifically how cool it is that there's a British guy roaming around Louisiana. It's the fact it's this British guy, which is what works for me. I will openly say the reason I like this film so much is just because of Roger Moore and how good he is in this film. I love the music. The music is one of my top 10s. Like, it's so different and new and fantastic and cool.
Mm-hmm.
I love it. It's, again, like with Goldfinger, like Goldeneye, I'm going to struggle to talk about these films because there's just too much I can talk about. It's just a film that at any point I can watch, have an amazing time, thoroughly enjoy myself. And there's some good action sequences too. Again, the double-decker bus doing a J-turn should look stupid, but somehow actually works. it's one of those things. It's the Bond film that should have been terrible, but is so well made that it actually works out massively in its favor. Like Baron Samedi, that should be a thing we talk about and joke about, but it's done really effectively and done really well. So yeah, it's almost like the Bond film that exceeded what it was meant to be and just became fantastic. I love Live and Let Die. It is such a good Bond film.
I am with both of you. I mean, I think this collectively, we put the closest to each other in terms of like overall rank and how high it is. Like, this is just such a fun movie. Like, Roger Moore is fantastic. I always make the joke that I think even though he is older than Sean Connery, like he was older than Sean Connery, I think he was 45 when he did this movie, and Sean Connery quit Bond when he was like 39 or something like that, or like 40. Like, there's a 5-year age gap between them, and he looked younger than Sean Connery in this movie than Sean Connery did 2 years prior in Diamonds Are Forever. Like, it is crazy how good looking Roger Moore is in this. It's a fun movie. I know I keep saying fun. I gotta find a better word for it, but like the setting, the locations are wonderful. All the main characters hit. The guy who plays Felix Leiter, David Hedison, is fantastic. Yaphet Kotto, like you said, Chris, absolutely amazing. The only knock I give it against it is the way they film Yaphet Kotto's demise, Mr. Kananga's demise.
Okay, yeah, I'll agree with you on that one.
With the balloon.
Yeah.
But like the rest of the movie is so strong, I don't care. Like I enjoy it so much. The chase scenes are great, and it's got a lot of humor in it. Even if you don't like J.W. Pepper, because some people find his character annoying. I love like the old lady and the pilot, and she says, "Holy shit!" As a kid watching that, I'm like, "Oh my gosh, it's a swear word! I could watch a movie with a swear word."
I'm like that as an adult. Trust me.
Oh my gosh, it's a movie with a swear word. Mel, do you believe this? It's like, yes, Chris, we've watched the Bond movies. They all have swearing. This is fucking amazing. Just losing your mind. No, I love this movie so much, though. It is one of my favorites. That's why I put it number 3. Any last words on it, Mel, since it's your number 2 before we move on to Chris's number 2?
No, I just think I'm just happy to hear that the two of you also really enjoy it as well, because I have heard this one, and again, I think if you're looking at it through a modern lens, doesn't hold up as well for a lot of people. So it's kind of nice to hear that y'all appreciate it as well, because this one is near and dear to my heart.
Oh.
A lot of the older Bond movies, I didn't say it in the top of the episode, and I don't really think it, like, when I did the deep dives on the movies, we had a discussion about that one infamous scene in this movie, and I'm not going to rehash it here, but the listeners, for those who have not seen some of these old Bond films, there are some questionable moments. As Mel said, there are some moments that would not hold up today, and arguably are questionable even back then. And with that said, that's not why we're watching the Bond movies, for those scenes. We like it for so many other moments, and these are old films. Like, it's not surprising there's stuff in them that's just not correct, that's just inappropriate. So I don't know, it's not a hill worth dying on. These movies are from the 70s and 60s. Like, what do you expect? You know what I mean?
Plus, as an extra added point, for those that don't know, right behind my desk I do have a colossal picture of Roger Moore in a speedboat in Louisiana with a cigar hanging out of his mouth, looking cool as hell, and that sums up Live and Let Die to me.
God, I love Roger Moore.
Hell yeah.
All right, Chris, your second overall. Skyfall. Almost a discussion for Skyfall. That's going to be coming, not just yet. I mean, that kind of gives me a hint. It gives us a hint for what mine is, I guess. But who would have guessed? But my number 2, it's a discussion round, is From Russia with Love. I was a little hurt, Mel, by you saying if you want to watch a Hitchcock movie, but I get it. I get it. I understand where you're coming from. I was hurt, but I understand.
That was
I love
particularly
this movie
brutal.
because
Hilarious, but brutal.
I mean that's the whole point of it, isn't it? But I love this movie so much. It is it's weird because the older Bond movies don't always work for me. Like they don't always quite hit for me. And like Dr. No is hard for me to like really get into, right? But for some reason from Russia with Love, when I rewatched it for not only this podcast, but also for once again that Skyfall prep that I was talking about, um, I was blown away by this. I loved the plot. I specifically was blown away by the fight scene between Red Grant and Bond on the train. That, you know, us Bond fans, that is a legendary fight scene. That is one of the first. That is like one of the most iconic ones. But also, it's important for cinema history because it was one of the first. I'm not going to say it's the first, but it's one of the first action set pieces where they cut on action, which was not done technically or usually back then. You know, back then you would just see all of the action play out on screen, but what they did in this is that, you know, you would have like you may see a shot of Bond or Red Grant starting initiating a punch, and then they would switch camera angles, and you would see the punch landing or them flying through a wall or something like that. Like you didn't see stuff like that in movies back when this came out in what I want to say 63, I believe.
That's-
Yeah, 63. It's just a really gritty fight scene, and even watching it all these years later, like there's moments where like Red Grant will pick up Bond and slam his back into like the seat, and it just the choreography is so well done considering this was not something that was very common at the time. I love the whole espionage of it. I love the spying, how they travel underneath like Turkey in like a boat in the catacombs or wherever to go to like the Russian consulate, and they can spy on the Russian consulate. How like there is like how Spectre is pulling the strings behind the scenes, even though you don't know who they are quite yet. Like the full breadth of Spectre, I should say. I love this movie so much. I actually think it's Connery's best performance as Bond. I know everyone likes to go with Goldfinger or like Thunderball or something like that. I think he's fantastic in this. It's one of I was just really impressed by so much of it, and even like the gadgets. It's the first time you really see a gadget in a Bond. It's really subdued compared to what you would get in the next film. But I love this movie, man. I can't say enough kind things about it. It was something that surprised me. I put so high, but it's like the more I watch that movie, the more I end up enjoying it. So From Russia with Love for me, it's just funny. Once again, I think me and Mel are very polar opposites on this one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, the thing of it is though, is that I don't hate it. I enjoy it as a movie. It's those Bottom Craig ones are very difficult for me to watch. This is I have no issue watching it. So I don't want to say like I think Chris said earlier, like everything like 20 and up is a really solid, enjoyable film, and I can agree with that. Even though it's in my bottom half, I don't hate it. It's a good film to watch. I enjoy it. I don't feel it's as strong as some of the others, and I think because again, it gets compared to Hitchcock so many times. It's like, ooh, I love this movie. It's so Hitchcockian. I don't know is that's a compliment to pay because there's someone who did it better, and that's Hitchcock. A lot of those elements that people appreciate, I'm a huge fan of Hitchcock, absolutely. So, and maybe just maybe this is also when we're talking about how Eon is constantly pulling from what's popular and what goes over well.
Mm-hmm.
So in that sense, I mean, it's only natural that they would, look toward Hitchcock, who has had so much success at the time with these suspenseful thrillers, No, there's a lot of love about this movie. Of course, the shoe with the knife in it. But I think,
Hmm.
like there's those scenes that you pull from it that are just fantastic. That the whole thing about the Russian clocks, I thoroughly enjoy watching that. I just think from in compared to the other Connerys, this one I just don't enjoy as much. And I think part of that is it feels slower to me, and I don't feel the slow parts that are as successful at building suspense as in Hitchcock that you can compare it
Hmm.
to. So that's kind of why, but again, like I enjoy it. I think it's a good movie. It's just my bottom Connery for those reasons.
It's fair. It's fair. And it's funny, like, this is a little cinema sin of my own. I haven't really watched any Hitchcock films, so that's probably why I don't have that, like, that comparison base. Like, I've heard the same thing too, but since I've seen pieces, but I don't think I've ever sat down to actually watch a Hitchcock movie all the way through. I know that's a cinema sin. I know I need to correct that, but that's probably where like my frame of reference is coming from. But Chris,
That
over to
makes
you
so
from
much
Rush.
just really quickly before we go over to Chris, that makes
Yeah,
so
yeah,
much
yeah.
more sense though, Josh. It really does because when Chris was just talking about how he loves License to Kill, having never seen Miami Vice or a lot of those
Hmm.
movies, of course, like, if this is your first exposure to it and you're coming in with fresh eyes, that makes so much sense. Absolutely.
But yeah, Chris, your thoughts on From Russia with Love?
This is an interesting one in the Bond canon because I feel like most Bond films could be described as action thriller films. This one I feel like is an espionage film. I feel like it's very different from everything else we see just based on how kind of grounded the content is. I think as a film, it's made beautifully. I think it's like framed incredibly well. It's shot very cinematically. There's one scene that always sticks out in my head where Bond is walking down past the train, and you see Grant shadowing him in the train whilst it's
Hmm.
happening. Those shots are very Hitchcock. That is exactly what Mel's talking about, but it's still done effectively and still works. And I think Red Grant as well is a fantastic henchman. I mean, arguably far more memorable than Klebb or Blofeld in this film. The only places where it falls short for me, I mean, for me personally, I put it at number 9. It falls short in a few places because there's a lot of exposition, which is why I think it's more kind of an espionage film in a way. There's lots of exposition, there's
Hmm.
lots of time where it's just talking, where if you're sitting down and paying attention fully, that's fine. If you're putting this on in the background, it's not going to work out well for you. This has to be kind of a film you sit down and watch fully to
And
kind of,
watch.
yeah.
That's very fair. Yeah.
That being said, though, it's the first time we hear the 007 theme, which is the action scene when they're escaping. As Mel says, the Russian clocks part, and then that whole scene where they take the Lecter is very, very good. And because it's been so much exposition, and because it's been kind of slow up to this point, it's a wonderful little bit of climax. The entire gypsy camp scene, I think, is fantastic, and the music punctuates it perfectly. Obviously, this was the first one which was scored by John Barry, and he's night and day from Monty Norman. Don't get me wrong, I have nothing against Monty Norman. He made the Bond theme, quote unquote, but that's a discussion in itself. But the
Mhm.
soundtrack to Doctor No was absolutely terrible. This one, you hear John Barry's influence, and it's weird how much a soundtrack can shape a film. Here, it really makes a massive difference. Kerim Bey is one of the best allies in the entire Bond franchise. He's fantastic. He is so charismatic, and you see a genuine chemistry between him and Connery, which is so fun to watch. Tatiana Romanova, not the best Bond woman ever. I will say that as a little bit. But overall, yeah, if you sit down and watch it properly, apart from the end where I feel like they shoehorn in the boat chase and the explosion just to give a bit more action, I feel like it's a very well made, very well crafted film. I'd say it's one that's definitely the most consistent across the board based on how it starts, how it continues, and how it ends. The comparisons to Hitchcock are there, but granted, Hitchcock was I would argue, the best filmmaker of that time. Granted that you can make the comparison, is that necessarily a bad thing when his films were such high quality?
Mm. Yeah, I don't know if you know what? Maybe if I do another ranking sometime, I will watch some Hitchcock films in between then, and I can give a more. I'll come back to From Russia with Love and be like, this son of a bitch, like, come on.
I don't think you'd ever feel that way.
No, I don't think so. I really like this movie, but we're moving into the final round. I actually was like, I was telling these guys off mic, like, yeah, this won't go too long. It's 3.5 hours. We've been recording for 3. I thought this wasn't going to be as long, but we got a lot to say about all these Bond movies. So let's wrap this up, shall we? Mel, your number one Bond film.
A View to a Kill.
Wait, what? Really?
Oh, who would have guessed? Oh my god, go off, Mel. I love this movie too, but go on.
Oh, it's phenomenal. There's, I know we were talking about during Diamonds Are Forever about how that's the most quotable movie. I feel like this one is.
Oh.
There's just so many parts of it that I love quoting. Anytime, I mean, oh my goodness, I quote Max so much. Like stupid stuff. You amuse me. Like there's so many parts of this movie that I just quote, just in my own life. All right, to start, Christopher Walken, phenomenal
Wonderful.
villain. I just
Wonderful.
absolutely love him. Great. He's such a wonderful actor. Just seeing him really have fun in the role is it's a delight to watch. It really is. Roger Moore is excellent. Oh, we talked about, the Avengers earlier, and Tibbet. Again, same thing with VJ, and just absolutely crushing. I loved, the screen chemistry that the two of them had. Of course, he's playing Steed, and sort of having Diana Rigg previously. It was sort of nice to have both of them have little cameos, or not even cameos, like been given roles in the Bond films. But I just felt like the two of them, just McNee and Moore, just got along. Their screen chemistry is just fantastic and fun to watch. Grace Jones, I mean, triple threat. Her costumes in the film. She was, of course, a supermodel. She had Elia do all of those costumes because she worked so much with him. She just, to this day, it holds up. She's just stunning. And also, I feel like I really love her character arc in this movie. When she sees her friends die and actually sees the consequences of her actions and turns it around, both as an act of revenge, but there is that part where you can see, she's crying after Jenny, and where she is remorseful. So I really like, her character arc throughout the movie. This is a movie, every single time I watch it, I have a good time. The over the top, silly, fire truck chase with the ladder and everything. I know it's very over the top, but I enjoy it. It's just a fun romp. And again, having this little slice of the 80s. The whole party that they have, when we have the whole, champagne with Stacy scene and everything, just looking at all the 80s fashion at the time with the big sleeves and big hair and the pastels. Again, just another little time capsule that I absolutely love. We get a little bit of the 80s with License to Kill, but again, because that was South Florida, the fashion was so different than in California. And it was a little bit earlier in the 80s as well for A View to a Kill. But just everything about this movie I love. It's just, that's why it's my favorite. So
I'll go next, and I think I'll keep mine a little bit brief, just so that way we don't go over the 4-hour mark on because I talk too gosh dang much. View to a Kill for me, it's one of the ones that like it's risen up the ranks for me. And I mentioned before how like sometimes someone's passion for a Bond film can raise its rankings for me. It actually wasn't yours, Mel. It was the James Bonding podcast. Matt Gorley puts this as his number one, and his like enthusiasm for it was so infectious that I can't help but enjoy it as well. I know I didn't put it nearly as high. I put it at 7, but like I still really enjoy this film. I enjoy the insanity that it is. I enjoy that it knows what it's trying to be. It knows it's a silly, over the top film, and I love every moment of it. It's really enjoyable. It's really fun. There's a couple moments where I do get a little bit like it does bore me a bit, but there's moments like that in a lot of Bond films. I like this one a lot. But what about you, Chris?
Yeah, this is one I always enjoyed. This is one that I was actually put on a lot when I was a kid, not from my dad's choice, but just what my mum would put on. Bizarrely, I'd be like, "Mum, I want to watch a Bond film," and she'd be like, "View to a Kill. That one's safe."
Grace Jones.
And to immediately jump on Mel's point, the quotable side, I do say, "You amuse me, Mr. Bond," quite a bit. It's just one of those very fun films. It's a really good one. Christopher Walken is my standout favorite part of this film. He's such a good Bond villain. Like, laughing while he falls off the Golden Gate Bridge is incredible. I love it. I love that sort of stuff. For me, I ranked it at 13. Because while I do recognize some pretty significant flaws, there are also flaws I'm willing to ignore just to have a good time. The music is fantastic. As you say, Grace Jones is fantastic, and Mel talking about fashion. When they're on the blimp and she ejects the businessman, notice that she has sunglasses that have two different shaped lenses.
Yes.
When you see that for the first time, you can never unsee that. And I think, no, did we notice that together for the first time?
I pointed it out to you. Yeah. Because everything, there was a lot of the asymmetry in the 80s. Yeah.
You pointed out to me, it is very much a moment of, I can never see this scene the same way again. No, it's a really just, it's one of those films that requires the portion of sense of disbelief, especially with Roger Moore and his age in this film, which for many is distracting. For me, I can look past it pretty easily. My only real downside is Stacey Sutton in the last third. For the first 2/3 of the film, she's fine. When it gets too screamy, I'm on a blimp, help, Stacey, I'm not the biggest fan. But no, for set pieces, when you think about how much the Bond series was escalating at this point, finishing a fight on the Golden Gate Bridge with an axe, hell yeah, I am 100% here for that. And this is definitely one of those films where, for any of those in the audience who ever wants to have my company for a night, say, hey, I'm watching View to a Kill tonight, and I'm there.
Well, maybe we'll have to have a how you guys aren't that far away from your couple hours drive. But we'll have to have a View to a Kill movie night.
I'll be at yours by 2 a.m.
I would love that. Also, Chris, to your point, how on earth did a blimp sneak up on her?
That's the sort of thing, though. I love that could be like a major flaw for many people. For us, we deliberately enjoy it.
Also, remember, there is a safe inside that blimp that for some reason they are storing dynamite in.
Where do you keep your dynamite? I keep mine in my safe.
I'm about to say, Josh, if you've not got a dynamite safe, you've not got a dynamite safe, mate, you're missing out.
So it's even more absurd that it's just like what, like the safe. Obviously, they for some reason they put it on the blimp to keep shit safe, but the only thing they're keeping safe is dynamite sticks.
I wish there was like a Bud Light next to it, or just some snacks.
Oh, how about if they threw some porn in, like in Tomorrow Never Dies?
Oh, I wonder what the next movie could possibly be, Chris.
No, that was the perfect segue. That was incredible.
What's your number one movie,
My
Chris?
number one movie is the only Bond film. Actually, no, it's not the only Bond film that actively has porn, because Spy Who Loved Me has some in it. But anyway, my number one...
And On Her Majesty's Secret Service.
Majesty's, yeah.
Yeah. Well...
Our porn dar is off the charts.
Now I've got to put it back down to number 3. My number one Bond film, which will not be surprising to anybody who's listened to this podcast, is Tomorrow Never Dies.
Go off. This is your time to shine, my friend.
I will fully admit this is rose-tinted spectacles to the earth and back. When I was younger...
That's all that we ask for.
Yeah. When I was younger, I said that, like, on the last video, my mum's I said that I watched View to a Kill a lot because my mum said it was a safe one. When I had the ability to work a VHS by myself, I'd always gravitate towards Tomorrow Never Dies, mainly because I loved the first 15 minutes, and then after that, my childlike brain would get distracted by spinning in circles or colouring, I don't know. But it just ended up turning into a film which I have a huge affection for because it's just the Bond film I watched the most. I had a big moment about 3 years ago where Skyfall was my number one favourite, without a shadow of a doubt. And then I realized I watch Tomorrow Never Dies more, and more often than not, if I'm going to watch a Bond film, I have a huge inclination to watch Tomorrow Never Dies again. And I kind of just gave in to that. I was like, this is my most watched Bond film by a landslide. It's the one I enjoy the most. It's the one I try to emulate the most with fashion choices I make, stuff like that. It's the one I listen to the soundtrack to the most. It's the one I know most of the dialogue from. It's the film I just really enjoy. Part of it is a nostalgic, comforting sort of thing. It's a very comforting film for me. Part of it is because I think the film is getting better with age, if you consider the media aspect of it and what's turning out in real life at the moment. It's brilliant. Pierce Brosnan in Tomorrow Never Dies, he was great in GoldenEye. He is already a perfect Bond for me in Tomorrow Never Dies. He's brilliant in it. The Hamburg scene where he's going through doing the spy stuff and then leads into an action scene is amazing. Wei Lin is an incredible Bond girl, like ridiculously high up there as Bond girls go. Carver, Elliot Price as Carver is phenomenal. He is hamming it up to the nth degree and he is nailing it. Like I want to walk into a group of boardroom people and say, hello, my golden retrievers. I say delicious when children hand me their homework. They say, I've done my work. And I go, delicious, specifically because of him. Even the car, which is a really quite silly scene, I enjoy because the soundtrack backs it up. Pierce Brosnan plays it off perfectly. When he reinflates the tires and giggles to himself, I would do the same thing. All of it just leads up perfectly. It's just a film where, yes, I know there's flaws, but they're flaws I enjoy. And this is a film I have nothing but pure love and ecstasy for. And I can fully understand why this might be somebody's 19th pick or somebody's 25th pick. For me personally, this is my Bond film, and it always will be. I cannot get enough of this film, and I'm going to feel that way for a very long time.
This movie it's grown a lot with me. It's still, I ranked it the lowest of all the Brosnans, but it was one of my favorites growing up. That's why I say it's grown a lot with me, because I literally, it was one of my favorites for a long time. The only reason it just doesn't hold up as much for me is I just don't have as much fun watching it as the others. Like, the action set pieces don't interest me as much. But I will say, I don't think Wei Lin's all that interesting of a Bond girl. Like, I think Michelle Yeoh is a phenomenal actress, and obviously I love her action movies in general, and just even when she's not doing action, her acting is fantastic. But I don't think she's really given a lot to do in this. I don't find her all that interesting. So I was surprised when you said that she's a really good Bond girl. I don't think her and Brosnan have a lot of chemistry, but it doesn't bother me. I still like her character. I like that she's like a secret agent as well, and she does cool shit. I think Jonathan Pryce is fantastic. He is so fun. Mm-hmm. He's chewing the scenery. He's cuckoo bananas, and he's wonderful for it. But that's all I really want to say on it. Mel, I'm going to throw it over to you. What are your thoughts on Tomorrow Never Dies?
No, I would echo a lot of what you said, Josh. I mean, this is still ranked really high for me. This is my number 10 pick. But I feel the same as you. I just feel like the whole Wei Lin Bond chemistry, I didn't see it on screen. I think she's great. She's a badass. But I mean, just as far as Bond girls go, I just didn't feel she had as strong of a screen presence or as much chemistry with Brosnan. I echo what you said with Jonathan Pryce playing Elliot Carver. Phenomenal villain. He was great. I have a lot of fun with this film. I absolutely love the entire sequence of him driving from the back seat, being the backseat driver. I love that. It's so much fun to watch. It's one of my favorite parts of that movie. So it's a thoroughly enjoyable watch. Yeah, absolutely.
One thing I will defend on the Wei Lin thing, yes, I think there's a lack of chemistry. I think what they have instead is respect for both being in somewhat equal roles in their secret services. And yes, they bang at the end of the film. I feel like they have both been spies and are like, we deserve a shag.
I mean, that is nowhere near as egregious as my favorite Brosnan movie, where Christmas only comes once a year or whatever the hell. I hate that. I love that movie, but that line is abysmal.
I'm pretty sure the line is. I'm pretty sure the line is. I've always wanted to fuck a turkey on Christmas.
That's exactly it.
It's very decisive on audience, but it worked.
Oh my god! All right, for the final movie in the draft, or not draft. I keep thinking this is the fantasy draft. This is not a fantasy draft. For the final movie in the ranking, my number one, Skyfall. This one I probably could swap out with. It's funny, like the top three for me, Skyfall, For Rush with Love, and Live and Let Die, I could inner swap out just about any day of the week. Right now, Skyfall, the only reason I am choosing it is it's the one that has stuck with me the most. Like I even though I don't watch it all that often, it's the one that like blew me away the most when I first saw it. And even watching it still, there's so many moments I love about it. I love the cinema. I think it has the best cinematography. I don't want to say out of all the Bond movies, but it's pretty damn close. It's definitely out of the Craig movies for sure. Between the casino in Macau, the glass the glass room fight in Beijing or Shanghai or wherever it's at, I'm forgetting right now. The opening action set piece I think is one of the best choreographed things. How Bond launches himself off of the bridge onto a moving train, and how like he chases after the bad guy on the train, and just everything about like there's so many, like as you can tell, I'm very action focused. I love action, like fight choreography and stuff like that. And I think this has some of the best set pieces and fight scenes in the entire franchise. I love the plot, even though we keep talking about how Bond rips off other stuff. It's basically The Dark Knight just 4 years later. But it works for me because Silva's such a fun villain. Javier Bardem is wonderful, absolutely wonderful. He is so good in this. Judi Dench in her final performance as M is wonderful. Like I love so much about this movie. I know there are plot holes in it, especially with like with Silva, Bardem's plan. Everything happens too perfectly. It seems a little too coincidental, and I agree with that. But I can suspend my disbelief enough where it doesn't bother me at all. I love this movie. It is. I saw it 3 times in theaters. I've tried to see every Bond movie multiple times since I got back into Bond, which Skyfall was kind of like my reintroduction back into it. After being really obsessed younger, took a break and coming back. Really, really, really loved it. Really loved my getting to see it. And it sucks because the 2 subsequent ones have been trash. Like I saw Spectre and there's a reason it's my number 25. Like it's wild to me that my number 1 is the movie prior to, like in terms of release order, it's prior to my number 25. Like it went from the highest of highs to the lowest of lows for me. And No Time to Die, as much as I don't dislike it as much as like a lot of other Bond fans. It's it's a polarizing one. It's wild to me how high Craig went, in my opinion, because even I like Quantum more than both of you, and then it just plummets. And so Skyfall, I can see how some people get a bad taste in their mouth because like it represents maybe the last like decently solid Bond movie in any way, shape, or form to some people. But I love this movie. I love even the fan surface works better for me in this. Like there's just so much to love. But Mel, I'm going to throw it over to you. I know you probably don't have some kind things to say about it, so I'm going to end it off with Chris. So we'll do a whole compliment sandwich for this movie.
Okay, there we go. Yeah, I'm not a fan of the Craig films, and again, it's because I find every single one of them very depressing. He
That's
never
very
succeeds.
valid.
Yeah, he never succeeds in a mission. And here's another one. Way to go, protecting M. Bond. You failed again. I just thought it was a piss poor way to see Judi Dench out. It blew. That's my opinion. I absolutely adored the way they sent Desmond Llewellyn off as Q. I thought that was a beautiful exit.
I mean, that wasn't on purpose, though. To be fair,
It was, well, he was retiring from the role.
Was he actually going to retire from the role?
Yes, that's why they were setting up R. So they were setting up, Cleese as R to take over the role. Nobody expected him to pass away, but he was retiring as an actor from that role, and that was just a beautiful send off for him. And I wish they had ended it in another way. I actually I know a lot of folks who really adore this film. Of the Craigs, I think it's watchable. Like,
Hey, that's high praise
I,
from you
I
for a Craig
know.
film.
As I've said, I haven't ventured to try Quantum, No Time to Die, or Spectre again. Casino Royale, I'm down to 53 minutes before I have to shut it off. I can watch Skyfall all the way through, so that's something to be said about it. But this style of Bond film just isn't for me, is what it boils down to. It's just not my taste. I certainly understand and respect those of you that really adore and appreciate this. It's just not my cup of tea. I just, like I said, I think she deserved a better send off than that, and it just bummed me out that here we've got Bond failing in another mission. Makes me sad.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Chris, any final thoughts on Skyfall, and then we'll wrap up the episode.
So I love this film. This is one thing, a perspective I have that's going to be unique to you two, and I know Mel's heard this a million times, so my apologies, Mel. This is arguably the most British Bond film, and when this came out, we just had the Olympics, so it was a time of big national pride in the UK. And it being such a British Bond film, it being a good Bond film with a British singer, all this stuff, it was a very kind of patriotic film in a weird sense of the word. And I'm not somebody who's overly patriotic. I mean, Jesus Christ, I moved to America. But it's just something that it was just such a unique moment of history where everything seemed to be kind of happy. Like, there's all the little things, like there are news reports about the new London double-decker bus will get its first sighting in Skyfall, like little things like this, which were just going through like the zeitgeist in the UK. Specifically for me, my main memory of this film, when I think about my viewing experience, was watching it with my dad for the first time, and after Quantum of Solace, where we were both very upset, my apologies, Josh, we then watched this in the cinema, and the film finished, we left in silence, because we were just taking it all in. We were both in like this kind of weird like sense of awe of how much we enjoyed that Bond film. It was exactly what we were both looking for. It was exactly what both of our like tastes was. And it's just a film that still resonates with me today. I really enjoy Craig's performance in this film. I really, despite the fact I think the music in Spectre is pretty abhorrent, I think it works just in Skyfall. I like the Moneypenny reveal. I like the locations. Granted, most of them are England, so of course I'm going to be a little bit selfish, in Scotland, of course. It's just a perfect culmination of stuff I really enjoy. Where Tomorrow Never Dies is a film I like a lot because it is fun. This is a film I like a lot because I think it is a beautifully well-made film. The cinematography in this film is incredible. When you see Silva with Skyfall and flames behind him, and the fact he's completely in silhouette, is gorgeous. It looks amazing. I mean, like the whole Javier Bardem, the fact he has an entire minute and 20 seconds of monologue when he's walking towards Bond as an introduction is incredible. And he's such a charismatic villain, something which we majorly missed out with Safin and Blofeld, for goodness sake.
I know,
it was just a film that it kind of felt like it was tailor-made for me. It felt like it was doing exactly what I wanted a Bond film to do. It gave me exactly what I wanted to see in every aspect. And yes, I know there's some pretty significant flaws that people are starting to bring. I know Skyfall was kind of the darling for lots of people for a very long time, and now people are starting to pick it apart. That's absolutely fine. I don't mind that. But for me personally, it's always going to be a top tier Bond film. I mean, there's a reason this made the most money of any Bond film ever in history, and I think it's because it is a damn good film. Granted, yes, it's a Daniel Craig Bond film, which I know irks some people the wrong way. I think he found his footing in this one. He was a bit rough in Casino, which I think was deliberate for him being a new spy. Quantum, I don't think we actually got to see any range at all, which affected that massively. Here we see him starting to be Bond. When he jumps onto the train and adjusts his cuffs, that's a like classic Bond thing. And you start to see that arising. And I know that a big sticking point for Mel there was Judi Dench dying. This Bond arc experiment they did, I mean, Craig's tenure is just meant to be tragic the entire way. I know what lots of people often say that the bad guy won in this film. I don't think he did because he died before he realized that M died too. So while it is a very small and shallow and unimportant victory, I still think it's one that speaks volumes, especially when considering that it then leads into a new M, a new Bond, the Bond theme swelling, the gun barrel, which I'm always about gun barrels being at the beginning of a film. I absolutely love it being at the end of the film here. Again, I could do this for another 25 minutes, so I'm going to cut myself short. This is just a film where everything in this film I adore. And that's the same with my top three. Tomorrow Never Dies, Skyfall, GoldenEye. I love every single aspect, and Skyfall is definitely one where I can just appreciate every moment.
I'm with you on it. And I think yeah, I couldn't have said any better myself, man. I love this movie. It's, even though it's not one I watch as much as some others, believe it or not, I watch a lot of the middle of the pack movies more often than I watch any of my top tier ones. But I still, the movie that really like wowed me the most, and like really, like when I think of a Bond movie, I think of this movie. It ended up being Skyfall. I really love this movie, even though it's nowhere near my first or any of the other ones that I've seen. I just really love it. So to wrap up this episode, because I was not expecting it to, I was like, oh, we're going to go up like maybe 2.5. We're almost at 4 now. I was going to list off some other stats from our ranking. I'm just going to do the overall ranking. What I did was every time we ranked something, it got it got the number of points that its rank was. So Skyfall for me was number 1, so it got 1 point. And then Spectre for me was 25, so it got 25 points. So what I did was I took that point total for each of our rankings, added it up together, and the higher the number it is, the lower the rank. So our consensus worst Bond movie was No Time to Die at 70, followed by Spectre at a very nice 69 points.
Oh gosh.
Quantum of Solace at 62. On Her Majesty's Secret Service was 60.
Ooh.
Moonraker at 58. For Your Eyes Only at 45 points. So that is that's your 20 through 25 right there. Is For Your Eyes Only is at number 20. At number 19, the next three are tied at points, and I don't quite know how to split them up, but the next three are tied at 44 points apiece. So this is 19, 18, and 17. They are tied. It's Thunderball, You Only Live Twice, and The Living Daylights. All tied at 44. Die Another Day at number 16 with 42 points. License to Kill at 15 with 41 points. Casino Royale at 14 with 40 points. That is very surprising to me. I think I put it the highest, but you guys both put it down more towards the mid to bottom, so that's what really brought it down. Dr. No, and actually the next three are tied. Dr. No, Octopussy, and Diamonds Are Forever are tied at 39 points apiece. That's 13, 12, and 11, if I'm looking at this correctly. Yep. At number 10 overall, The Man with the Golden Gun with 36 points, and followed also right after that, The Spy Who Loved Me with also 36 points, but that one I was more confident in putting above because I think we in general rated The Spy Who Loved Me a little bit higher on all of our lists than The Man with the Golden Gun. From Russia with Love at 29 points, that's at number 8 overall. Number 7, Tomorrow Never Dies at 27. At number 6, The World Is Not Enough, me bringing that up really high with my number 5 on that. Now we're in the top 5. I'm going to stop giving the point totals. There's one tie in the top 5, and it's tied for actually technically second and third place. So top 5, number 5 is Skyfall. Number 4, A View to a Kill.
Nice.
Tied at second and third is GoldenEye and Goldfinger. I think I put Goldfinger above it because I want to say they were closer together, but because Goldfinger, it happened at Chris and I put it at number 6. Mel, you put it at number 4, and then GoldenEye I put down at number 8, and you guys put higher at like 5, and it's harder. I don't know. They're tied for second and third though. Number 1 with a bullet. is Live and Let Die.
I love it.
Live and Let Die. We all like Live and Let Die. Where did I put it at? I put it at 3. Chris put it at 5. Like that one was in our top 5 for all 3 of us. That's why
wild.
that one.
So
that
isn't
is
that crazy?
wild. This is what I love about this, because if you got 3 different people doing these rankings, how different this list would look. I love it.
That's what I love about Bond movies. It is so like there is no wrong way to love or hate a Bond movie. Like there's it's so varied. But we're going to wrap this up now. Thank you both so much for joining me. What a way to kick off the first ever recording session in the new house with a 4-hour recording session. So where can the good people find you online? Because this is going out on the main feed. So yeah, where can everybody find you online? What would you like to promote? Mel, we're going to start off with you.
All right. So I'm on Instagram. My account is Burb, James Burb. That is bird with a B, Burb. And I do a James Bond parody with my pet parrot. So a parody. And it's just like Roger Moore's films. It is just silly fun. So you can find me there.
And that's Burb.James Burb, right? I think there's a period in there.
Yes, correct, with a period. Yes, Burb, period, James Burb.
I will tag you on it in Instagram, of course. And then Chris, over to you. Where can the good people find you online?
Same thing. I'm on Instagram. I'm British Bond Addict, all one word. I basically post kind of whatever I like to about Bond. More frequently, I focus on ties, neckties specifically. And currently, I'm doing a rundown of every single tie I own on my tie of the day. And I'm on 71 ties so far, which is shocking.
I love it. I was telling you on a Still Bonding episode on the behind the Patreon wall about how I need you to be my professional like stylist, because I have no idea what the hell I'm doing. So
I'm more than happy to do that with you.
It would be, I honestly, once I can figure out some money situations, I probably would. But that is going to do it for this episode, y'all. As usual for myself, you can follow me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, @StillLoadingPod on all of them. I am not going to really be active on Twitter that much more, just because it's not been good for my mental health recently. So I'm kind of dropping that cesspool. If you want to support the show, I'm just going to go quick plugs. So if you want to support the show, please consider giving it a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts or whichever podcasting app you use. That helps more people find it. If you want to support it monetarily and get access to all the other Still Bonding episodes, that the Still Bonding is at the $5 level, but it's patreon.com/stillloadingpod. For $5 a month, you get all 25 Still Bonding episodes, plus a bunch of extra bonus episodes. I think there's over like 30 or 40 bonus episodes at this point, maybe even more, maybe up to 60. I don't remember what number I'm up to. But the next month, we're going to be kicking off Still Family. It is a monthly Fast and Furious movie podcast, and we're going to be kicking off with the first Fast and Furious movie next month. So if that sounds interesting to you and you liked this whole ranking thing, please consider checking out the patreon.com/stillloadingpod. Bunch of cool stuff over there. But that will do it for this episode of Still Loading. Thank you all so much for listening. Chris and Mel, thank you for joining me.
It's been great fun. And also, this is conclusive. The best Bond film of all time is a Roger Moore Bond film. We say that conclusively and with 100% emphasis.
Hey, nobody does it better.
Hey!
Perfect. Fucking perfect. Thank you all so much for listening. And with all that said, listeners, I will see you all next time.